presenting as well. So start over here.
I'm Lynette Ham. I'm from Hetland Primary School, which is outside of Melbourne in Victoria. I'm here presenting today about what we do with games in our grade 3 classroom.
Great. And Con?
I'm Con. I'm from North Fitzroy Primary School. It's a suburban school, and I'm presenting building games with children using Scratch.
Great. Excellent.
Brian Toohey from St Lawrence's College, just up the road. Been part of the project for the last couple of years, so looking to kick on and benefit further.
Cool. Excellent.
I'm Christy, Year 6 at Mudgee Junior College. I'm new to all this, so I'll be enjoying learning tonight.
Great. Excellent.
Melita from Mudgee Junior as well, Year 6 as well.
Great.
Kevin from Nudgee Junior, Year 6, and same boat as all these other teachers here.
Dave from Nudgee Junior, same boat.
So Year 6.
Right. And we'll end.
Yep,
Yes.
Sarah. I work at group as part of the team. One set of my schools are St Catherine's, they're all primary schools, and interestingly, grade 2, grade 3 and grade 6. So the grade 2 does find it a bit difficult because of the age with groups, so we'll talk about that today. And I'm doing a session on with the iPads today after lunch. Nice. That's it, cool.
Okay. Roberta.
I'm Roberta, and I think I've had contact with everyone in the room, so I kind of do all the administrative
Roberta
business.
runs the project.
Yes.
Without her,
I
the
pretend
project
I'm not.
doesn't exist.
And Jason Scarney, I'm also at Griffith University.
I'm Michael Dejuani. I'm from QUT. One of the great things about this project, I think, is that it is a genuine collaboration across 3 universities. So Griffith Uni, QUT, and Monash in Deakin in Victoria. And yeah, it's terrific that we get this kind of cross-university collaboration happening as far as research goes, but also it means that we get some terrific, collaboration across schools and across states and so on. And so that for those of you who are new, we've been, this is our 3rd year now, and we have these PD days, and often we'll have a video link up with Victoria where we share stories about what we've been doing with the project and that sort of thing. But we thought this time around, because we wanted to have a bit more of a practical hands-on focus, that we'd actually bring some of the teachers up from Victoria to do some of that hands-on PD, and then at some point some teachers from Queensland will also go down to Victoria to do some stuff. Hi guys. Jackie, you have to introduce yourself as you walk in the door.
Oh, I'm Jackie Child from St Aidan's.
I'm Margaret Toomey. I'm a doctoral student at Griffith University.
Thank you. We're just kicking off because people are running late.
Sorry,
so
we're
no,
stuck in traffic.
no, you're not late. It's other
Pull
people
them
who
out.
are late.
Pull them out. I mean,
Later.
Later.
Can't pull that.
Yeah, no, we have other people who still aren't here as well, so it's all good. So the focus for the day, or for most of the day today, is that it will be quite hands-on and we'll be quite focused on production type stuff or making. So throughout the project we have kind of had different kinds of focuses as we've gone through the project. And so, for instance, on a different day, we kind of had a look at a focus on critical thinking around games and how you might do some of that. We've obviously looked at learning through games at various points during the project as well. And you guys from Nudgee, I know that you're saying that you're new to you're definitely obviously new to the project, but I know from my conversations with you that you have used some games in the classroom in the past, and so I think you will be able to contribute to the conversation very ably, and you'll get a lot out of the day, I hope, but you'll also have a lot to put back into it as well. So we are, though, starting this morning with a focus on something we have kind of done in the past, but that we want to wrap up today in this first session, and that is a focus on assessment and games. So throughout the project we have had this kind of ongoing conversation about what it means to do assessment around games. And to kind of summarise a key tension or a point that we've gotten to, there's a kind of a discussion we've had in the past about whether we're just still assessing the key learning areas, So for instance, if you do some learning around games or with games or making games, do you assess what you're doing with the game per se, or do you assess the curriculum area that you are working in? And I think what we've kind of settled on is that most people seem to think that, well, of course, you still keep assessing the key learning area, and the game is just the kind of vehicle through which you're doing that. But having said that, with the data that's come through when we've interviewed people involved with the project, it's still not quite that straightforward. There are still times when people are saying, yeah, there are lots of things that happen with games that you can't quite assess, or that fall outside the realm of the key learning areas and so on. So we just wanted to have one final session today where we talk a little bit further about assessment and the use of games in the classroom. And the way we're going to, what we need to do though is not just think about assessment in a narrow way, but what I think really comes through in the data is that it's really what we might call assessment for learning. So that when assessment occurs, it's part of a bigger, richer learning experience. So actually most of the comments that come through in the data are about what students are learning, not a kind of narrowly defined idea of, getting a C for English, where people happen to be using games. So what I've done is I have, basically we've got the data on a table here, and it's just a set of teacher comments or summaries of teacher comments that come under headings. I'm going to break you up into tables, and I am going to break you up across schools as well, so that we don't just have school groups together. And group 1 is going to look at the heading, the experience, and also the heading, the process to begin with. So they're the first two categories that are on this table. And then you're going to go on to challenges and difficulties. Then you're going to go on to production. And then the topic of state or ACARA-based curriculum alignment. Group 2 does knowledge and understanding, challenges and difficulties, critical literacy and general capabilities. And Group 3 will do feedback and interaction, challenges and difficulties, curriculum, social skills, and then things not considered. Those headings will make more sense when you see the table here, obviously. Okay. Now, and then at 10:10, and we're already behind with our time, so I'll make an adjustment to some of those times shortly. But at about 10:10, we'll have a whole group discussion, and we'll actually record a whole group discussion, which will then become further data for the project. Now, a key objective here is, or what I would like you to do, is to choose one comment from each set of teacher responses. So, for instance, we've got the experience here, and then we've got a set of exemplars or responses. I want you to just choose one of them, the one that seems to be the most interesting or the one that you'd like to really focus in on, and have a conversation about that particular comment. And then I want you to write a key recommendation about the comment for teachers who might be new to using games. And part of the reason for that is because one thing we want to do with this project is make a set of recommendations for people in the future about best practice in the use of games or things that we found from this project that would be useful to know about using games in the classroom. Okay, so if I give you an example, if you're in Group 1, you go to the experience, there's an exemplar here which says, they seem to get switched on by it, but some kids got bored. Okay, so I'd like you to have a conversation about that, maybe talk about whether you've noticed similar things at your school, some of the concepts around that, and then a key recommendation that comes out of that particular comment. Okay, so I'm going to divide you up with maybe a couple of you from Mudgee Junior on this table. Maybe Brian, you might like to go to that table as well. And a couple of you from Mudgee Junior can stay at that table. And maybe Con, you might like to go over there. And then Jackie, you might like to come across to this table. And Lynette, you can stay there. And we might have one other person from Mudgee Junior on this table as well, I think. Okay, so if we can divide up like that, and so this will be Group 1, this will be Group 2, and this will be Group 3.
Time's talking about me, I'm not.
Members of the research team
No,
will
I'm
join
here.
groups as well.
We've only got two.
You've only got two.
No, we got three.
Do the number one.
But to see how the, such a very good mind.
No
People
one
seem to be moving.
I think Jackie, sorry, Margaret, do you want to make this one?
Sure.
I've only got, I've kind of got something to share.
Mum, show us. I don't really go anywhere apart from the hotel here and here.
Group two, Shelley
Yeah.
Nolly does not.
So you're from the uni then?
No, I'm teaching.
No, you go for it.
Okay, so tell me when you go.
So we're group three.
It's actually not very good. That changes the way.
Yeah, does that make sense? So if, so you guys,
I got one more year less.
you guys have got experience and choose one of these,
Black
we'll talk about it, try and write a recommendation, or some, if it's not a recommendation, then something that is a substantial point, you know? The sense of task.
Sort of, so we look at one of the comments from knowledge.
First need to choose which of the
So,
Yeah, knowledge and understanding. Yep, so you choose one from here that looks interesting, discuss it,
yep,
have a think about how it relates to your school setting.
Yep.
And then try and write a recommendation. If it's not a recommendation, maybe a key idea that comes out of your conversation around it. And of course, if you want to do more than one, if
Okay,
it makes
we've got
sense to,
time.
if you've got time. Yeah. You guys know what you're doing? Kind of. I'm just wanting, you've got,
each section we pull one out?
yeah, just one out. So read through them, choose one that looks interesting to talk about. And if there are two that are fairly similar, you might talk about them together. And then, if you can't write a recommendation as such, then maybe you're writing more like a key comment or something.
those or
All
these
these
ones
ones as well.
and a few more.
Which is
That's the process.
Okay, right.
Process goes over the curriculum.
Remembering that some of these things might have been you said as well. In that,
The
when
one
you
that's
interview,
minus the second one.
not nudging people, but others.
Success is
That they're enjoying it, they're learning, they're meeting the content scripts.
oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
We can have that for Monday, so
What would be your recommendation based on that? What would you recommend to new teachers just coming to using
design, interviews.
So the Nike approach, just do it.
Just do it?
Where I've just tried, I've never done computer games.
But
maybe set up some sort of peer mentoring where they can go and observe what is successful in the classroom.
Okay.
She's got science in
I guess that's part of this
maths.
project, isn't it? Let's give it a go, how does it work? Yeah.
So not be afraid of it, just get in there and try it out.
In the curriculum areas, so
Okay.
to assess it, she doesn't assess it.
Yeah, there's going to be
It's more about
trepidation from a lot of teachers, you might not feel confident.
Especially teachers that
Yeah,
don't feel
yeah.
Anything
themselves.
has
But it was
naturally
part of all that.
Quite a lot of
That
stuff.
assessing
Also, with the curriculum so busy,
It's just
do you actually have time to,
Yes,
yeah, been providing
You know what I
it.
mean, so she wasn't.
but that's where,
That's right.
looking at where it can actually complement the curriculum.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of planning involved in making sure you
So
cover
that's
the content or whatever, but if you can do it in that context,
Yeah.
do the enjoyment, enthusiasm.
I wonder what their parent perspective might be as well when they hear the word game. They probably think, oh, they play games on the weekends.
Yeah.
Setting them to pay money for school fees for them to play games. So whether you get that parent education as well.
Look, you'll probably end up with somewhere or other. Well, I've been involved in the last 5 years more than any, I should say that last year, 2 years ago. The parents would just have a sign for them go. They were interested.
And then try and just write a statement.
But at the same time, we take policy up for game.
Yeah.
You haven't got parents coming and change it.
No, exactly.
Might be using
Or
that.
challenge you, what you're doing in that sort of thing.
If you've got a good relationship or a good environment where you're trusting the teachers to make the Sometimes that will be considered, but often with these sort of things,
Any of these?
just planning, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's right.
No, I don't
think
Or something in the school history of motivating and saying how wonderful it is.
keep that medium.
We've got those engraved whiteboard.
Yeah.
And they'll be maths, teachers and English coming up and they're getting the answer.
That's the boys, and you get a lot more out of it if it's something
Similar.
that.
Those games.
Yeah, but they'll enjoy doing that as opposed to doing the worksheet.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah. But it can also be for parents to actually see value in what the students are doing in their home.
Yes.
So they're learning through there, so all we see in games is negative. Having students showing how to use their learning. Parents can see that.
Grade 5, 6 teachers.
Yeah.
Ran an integrated project called Richmond Project. And basically the whole project was about how all the 5, 6ers had to maintain and create a sustainable world through Minecraft. People had to create campaigns and they wanted to work together. So they came
And we still only did that.
so it like grew with nothing, and then when a particular event happened, the kids would be like, one class would be like, oh, we need to put this for the student. So that was like keeping it there.
Well, they, yeah, we, first year round, we
Yeah.
analysing games,
Yeah, because the kids could
using games, but also creating. So it was the focus was on games.
So it was just
That was
the
good, so we
meetings
created
just
games.
yeah, the whole project was just through Minecraft.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, what's the game?
Yeah.
Well,
So they're really
that was pretty much
successful.
left up to the groups that they were working on, so some kids would get the text-based adventures, and others would do platform jumping games, sort of avoid.
Well, they mapped like within Victoria's hospitals.
We were working on
Combination of the whole Victorian learning
7
system.
deadly sins and 7
They
healthy virtues.
They just mapped out
You know, they had to try
what
one of each.
are related
They all
to
came up with their
projects,
own
and from there
creative ideas.
they said, oh,
So the
it covers all
content
these
is
things, and we'll see where else it goes. Because then the kids have freedom to.
Put lots of
History, focus on things like art.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
If we just tick that one and then put a recommendation next to it, so just do it.
It's kind of really exciting to run the unit,
Yeah.
but all I wasn't part of it.
Well, the one that
Enthusiasm.
in grade 3 last year.
And
Maybe we need to choose one now from their processing.
So they had to look at the historical.
So these guys are looking at
And they had to look at the housing.
Picking one of these
and,
grants that we can
how would you
choose one
plan?
recommendation for some
Literally
huge
in
thing.
Minecraft, you know, they had to plan out there, most because of all of what they wanted to their little area to have, so they had to look at direction between the number of people, the number of students in the area, the number of creators. That's something that districts, the width of the road, so there's all mass language, you know, activities and things like this, ways of text to sell their area, you know, to, and then they do your presentation, and you walk through the area and you so I think that the assessment wasn't about what the creative was.
I'll leave it to you guys to formulate some sort of statement around that.
Scripted up there, so it was about text, the historical understanding of the local area, all that type of thing, that's there. Knowing what exactly. So what can we add to this bit? You have to make sure you address that during the walk.
I like the one where they tested my appearance devised and rights properly.
The teachers might come, they might come also
Test their games out on each other and pick apart each other's games and find faults.
So what would be some recommendations for people new to gaming, teachers new to gaming?
Actually, we did quite a number of them, so, you know, you've got to have a good plan, know exactly where you're going at the end. You have to have a good plan in mind, you know. Found that letter playing and tape on its own.
That's
Really, really, particularly problem solving analysis, but I guess it comes down to the assessment. Yeah, you're going to have a test on content that they have to have covered.
So you should be just, I'll play the teacher, you should be just about to move on to the second topic now. Right.
So do we want to tick that one?
But I do like that one. That peer evaluation is really good. Well, I did find that. I found the kids playing each other's games and testing out, hey, this is not working, that's really good, I like that. I'll put that in my account.
Absolutely. Better feedback for me. And just because they're using games doesn't mean they have to fit in one pedagogical approach. That's exactly or not like that. And it's a strength that some kids have, others don't. That's right, we're not doing that the whole year. Can you just explain the second one, Chris? Working out the challenges and
Well,
difficulties?
they're here, so you have to go and find the challenges and difficulties for it.
Yeah, it's got to be mostly worked into.
Yes.
What there.
But I would also
Stephen, isn't told two other things this week or something. And so just have
First two comments are very similar.
Sorry. Fit. Make it fit.
So yeah, just a combination of
The hiccups, yeah, getting on and it's, the working on the system that's
But that should hopefully get better each year.
and the outside of the project, we almost felt like it was.
if it's plugged into the system, it's fine, but if it's plugged into wireless, wireless is rubbish.
Yeah, so we
And each class only has 7
not an extra
disposable devices.
You work into those KLAs.
And getting on is a pain.
It makes your life easier and it also add a lot to the kids' experience in the classroom.
Things that are
Well,
required.
installed ones,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
some games can be installed on
Yeah.
devices.
That was the initial
Installed.
challenge for us, was to try and figure out
So,
how we're going to cope.
our solution to that is just we don't sit steps. I don't know if you do.
Yeah.
Even when they, are you talking about the
Even the mobile devices,
Yeah.
they just
The
don't.
tablets.
Yeah, the tablets.
They used them last term, and they got to the point where they were ready to print it out, and then the whole thing just froze, and then they lost all their work. So we just avoid them. Same reason, and across the year levels, I think it was a decision made before my time, but it was a trial.
These are web-based tablets, so they
Yeah.
work
Yeah,
on the internet.
and I think some of our, what are they called?
It's- No, it's not.
Wireless.
Wireless
Yeah,
devices were
yeah.
positioned in the wrong spot in the classroom as well, and that contributed, but I think the devices themselves weren't very, I don't think it's that much bigger than that.
No, I know what you mean.
Oh,
And those
it's
are
so
devices,
frustrating, and
you
it's
realise.
sometimes times take you 10 to 15 minutes for it to just sit in there.
But as schools realise those problems, and they're starting to put more and more get the practice points, things should overcome.
Yeah. So we, they are so much about just can't work the houses.
So would you want to top two are pretty similar.
There's a real tension there.
Way of assessing that.
Can I enable this to go deep enough to get what I need to get out of
Yeah,
it?
assessment does
Or do I
seem
have
to
to
be,
just
well, that's really
swing
making
through
it-
all that stuff to move fast? And I'll tell them, because if I tell them we can move, we can move, you know.
I guess it comes down to what's mandated and what's controlled.
The goal is to reach one,
Free rein. So I told the board, yeah, okay, it's better. You've got to assess it, you've got to work
On some of those key ideas that came out of your discussion, whether they are actual recommendations or whether they're, just key thinking or key ideas that, you think should be passed on to other teachers in the future. Whatever you've come up with, that'd be awesome. So group 1 here looked at 2 categories, the experience and the process. So what was your conversation around that?
Well, I guess the experience largely was, it can be very positive and encouraging. It can be a bit daunting as well, but I think the outcomes really speak for themselves when you look at student engagement. So I guess it coined a phrase of the Nike experience, just do it, get involved, give it a go. I think the outcomes that come from that certainly have been worthwhile from the experience that we've seen. And a lot of the comments there seem to be concerned about, is this going to be appropriate? I think once you get yourself involved in those sort of experiences, they tend to drift away as you travel along. Answers a lot of those problems that you might feel exist.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What about the process? Did you guys have a comment about that one?
We chose the exemplar, the fact that when it's tested by a peer that it's debugged and it runs properly. And I think that we came up with some recommendations that just having that student awareness, that might be part of the process, that peer review will be taking place. And also just having that embedded within the program. And so the teacher and the students know that it's going to be critiqued by each other, by their peers and by the teacher as well.
So that was particularly in relation to game making, wasn't it?
Yeah, the actual production and testing it out so they play the game with each other.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think a couple of other groups have mentioned.
And I think the students want that as well. They want to be able to have feedback on other games and offer a bit of advice, and they gain a lot from it. They don't take it as a criticism. They're keen to have other kids look at what they've done.
Just bringing that authenticity to the task.
So I mean, that's pretty, that's something we haven't necessarily talked about a lot in relation to assessment per se, this whole idea of peer assessment and peer feedback and so on. And I heard, Con, you were talking about that as well with your group in terms of, was it year 9s and year 3? Or that they were looking at each other's games?
Year 9s were looking at year 3 games.
Yeah. Did you want to say a little bit more about that? And
we just had a day, like when we ended the unit, we run like a gaming expo, and we're lucky enough that Deakin was able to create a partnership with Kew High School, and year 9 students came into our classroom and got to play our year 3 students scratch games, and they got to fill in this pro forma and give them verbal feedback and give them written feedback. And, it was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah. So what did the students, so the students who made the games, how did they respond to the feedback?
Oh yeah, they really they took on board the feedback more. They took on board more than the feedback I gave them.
Yeah.
Like when I was telling them their games were good, they weren't that sure. They were always questioning themselves. But when the year 9 students came in and said, "Oh wow, I tried to make a game scratch, I couldn't get this far. Can't believe you got this far."
Yeah.
And I'm getting 9 out of 10s or what. Like the grade 3 students, we're like, oh, maybe we are good at making games.
Yeah.
So it was really nice.
Yeah, great. Cool. Okay. Were there any other final comments from this table about that first category at all?
Just highlight those two.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks. So this table here, then, you guys looked at knowledge and understanding.
Yep.
How did you go?
So we kind of focused more on the first comment there, which was basically around the notion of widening the students' horizons. So giving them the opportunity to not necessarily focus on a specific key learning area at a time, but more coming in from a holistic viewpoint. So really the comment or the suggestion that we came up with was around that notion of using the game as a platform, and it then gave us the ability to assess the different key learning areas through that medium of the game. I think that's as far as we got.
I mean, the beginning of the comment there really interests me in that it's, that games give them this other experience that they're not otherwise going to get. And I think that comes up quite frequently across the comments and the discussions and so on as well. I find that sort of interesting in the sense that, obviously you can bring other kinds of resources into the classroom, like, literature or you know, film resources and so on, but there seems to be something about games that the students particularly respond to, and that does get them thinking in broader kinds of ways, or is that just me? Lynette, do you want to add to that?
I think that there's a sense of games don't belong in school, that we're still trying to dispel, and I think that's one of the reasons the kids love it so much. It was that kids got, playing games, we're being naughty and they're giggling, and then I made them learn from them and went, right. But it's also something that school and home were kept quite separate. Games belonged at home and school was for paper and pencil and that sort of thing. I think that when we started to bring those home technologies in, they started to respond in that way that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's just something I noticed over the last few years.
Yeah. So when we say it's connecting to bigger things or bigger concepts, is it about making that connection to just stuff they're interested in?
I think so. It's stopping that separation of school from real life.
Okay, cool.
With this idea of the game being a platform, we discussed that it's not necessarily, like the game can provide that sort of the dynamics or the excitement or the wonderment or like to that degree, so that when you're doing the history and the maths, that's all lost because we're playing the game. So it becomes a platform that, as you were saying, it's much more than the movie or the book that you're reading. It's like when you get a book and the book comes alive. So you can be assessing the science and the maths and the English, but the game is just sitting underneath all that, and it provides a more dynamic way to bring it all together. So that as you move through, the children are engaged so much more by playing with the game, but you can still assess the persuasive text that they might have produced, or the, you know, or doing the mathematics that they were doing, the maths in action. So it just provides that level, that platform that is so much deeper.
So my question then, my next question then is, so are we talking about particular kinds of games, or does Mathletics do this, for instance?
No.
Does it? Or, I mean, are students engaged by Mathletics in that kind of way?
We got rid of it.
Same way.
You got rid of it?
Yeah,
We don't call it a game.
game. But it is quite a popular one that's used in schools.
We still use it.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
it's
use it as homework. We just don't call it a game.
If you look up Khan Academy,
I've done that.
yeah, our school's just stopped at Khan Academy. It's amazing.
Brilliant.
It's got like gamification elements. The kids think it's a game because they earn badges and points, and really they're learning maths and like coding and all these other things.
Okay.
And it's free. It's all free.
So what do you think it is about Khan Academy that's because it's the badges and so on that they can earn?
Oh yeah, the kids come in and they're like, oh, I've got this many points, and you know, and the teachers are doing it, and then there's like this competition between the teachers and the kids.
Right.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's all free, and it tailors to the students' learning abilities. So actually, it's dynamic. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Okay.
All we have to do is just set up the students' accounts, and we're good to go.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right, we'll keep moving on then. So feedback and interaction, this table here.
I came in a bit late, but what we came up with was we had a few points. One was to really respect students' knowledge and their expertise and their game. Sorry, respect students' knowledge and their expertise with games in feedback, and that after students have had a range of experience with games, that they start to realise whether they're learning or not, and that they start to critically analyse the games, and that their feedback becomes more about that was learning rather than that was fun, and that Lynette was talking about that you have to work harder with the younger kids to get them to a point where they're making those kinds of observations than the older kids. But so that was kind of like, I guess, feedback from the kids about what the games were. So feedback from the kids about how the games were valuable, for the second point. And the first one, teachers' feedback, was to respect the kids' expertise.
Okay, good. So I know there's quite an extensive conversation here about that whole thing of, you know, it's a little bit like doing the formal feedback here in terms of, you know, it makes sense to have students judging each other's games or providing feedback on each other's games. But there's also that thing of when, you know, the knowledge or the expertise around a game will often sit with the students, and they may have they may have more expertise in the game than a teacher does, and that needs to be respected.
Mhm.
Is that right, Lynette?
Yeah, that was about it, just wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was trying to dispel some of the fear where teachers might say, well, I don't know how to play that game, so I can't use it as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about having an awareness of the content to make sure it's appropriate and to know how you're going to use it for learning. But apart from that, the kids are the experts, and to let them and
So you-
take their advice.
Do you want to talk a bit about your role in your school and how that comes up with when you're working with other teachers in the school about, you know, your kind of cross your ICTs role?
Yeah, I'm still quite isolated with my game-based learning.
Right.
So I did teach 5-6 and I was doing a lot of game-based learning there. The idea with moving me to 3-4 was if we're developing these problem-solving skills and communication collaboration, we need to see the results for longer in our school. So move to 3-4. So with the IT at the minute, I haven't started with game-based learning. I actually start next week with the 5-6s because I asked them what they thought. I asked them to write a persuasive, convince me that I should let you play games for an hour in IT next week. And they were talking about how Mathletics helps them with their learning and that they should be able to play cool maths games online. And none of them tried to convince me to play Mario Kart or Big Brain Academy on the Wii or anything like that. They're all thinking about the really basic games. So I'm just trying to think where I was going with that. I'm going to be introducing more commercial games and pointing out the learning with them next week. I wish I'd done it earlier. I didn't even think. But yeah, we're not seeing the carry on with the communication, the problem solving, because the teachers aren't carrying on with the game-based learning.
Yeah.
So I guess the principal wants me to get it started, but there is a lot of fear, and this is a discussion we had about fear of trying new things, and the recommendation came from that, let the kids be the experts.
Right.
So it's all still a work in progress, and I've been using games since 2009, and I'm still the only teacher in my school that does it.
So what's the fear? Like what can you say a little bit more about that?
So some teachers have said, I'm not doing that because I don't know how to play. And I've said, I'll come in and work with you, and they said, no, I don't have the time, I'm not going to, it doesn't fit in with the curriculum, it doesn't fit in with my literacy groups. So I use it in literacy groups. It's a rotation. Just the idea that people don't have time can stop, and that came up in the feedback, I don't have time to do this. And some people just say, look, I've never played it before, so I can't teach with it. Whereas, a lot of us in this room, we don't think like that. We say, I haven't played it before, I'll go play it. So yeah, just working away, trying to change the mindset, but not trying to force anything on anyone. It's taking a long time. But,
what is it with saying that you're in a school that's a bit out of Melbourne?
Yes.
It's fairly sort of isolated, but it's
I guess we call it, we're regional, so we're not rural and we're not metropolitan, we're regional. There's only 160 children in a town of 50,000, so we're a small school in our town. A lot of the teachers are the expert 4 range, at the top of the most experienced teachers. We have, in the last 3 years, we've picked up graduate teacher every year. And these younger ones, they're more willing to have a go. And so I'm working with them a little bit more, but as soon as I leave, they sort of lose confidence in me. But, we're getting there.
Cool. All right. Thanks. That's awesome. Right, we're going to go to challenges and difficulties, and you've already started talking about some of those. Did you want to add anything to challenges and difficulties from this table?
we had challenges to know that anything that's new is going to have a challenge, to be patient, to find new ways of doing things, to know that the technology is likely to fail, to be patient and persevere and let the kids help you to get it going again, to learn alongside the kids, and to recognise that students will also learn from each other.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to keep going because of time constraints, but that's cool. What about this table here? What did you have in relation to challenges?
We pretty much echoed what was already said over there. Just a couple of other ones was the challenge or the difficulty around justifying having games in the classroom. So in my particular case, justifying to the parent body what you're doing and, you know, how that applies to learning and more importantly, how that applies to the different subject areas and how you're going to assess it and, you know, that notion of change again, making it look a little bit different, more exciting for the kids, but you still got to justify it to the parents.
Yep.
And we also spoke about the challenge of initially making it fit. So teachers are time poor. You know, the notion of making it fit into an already busy day, week, year. And I guess you've just got to be a little bit smart about how you implement these games. Literacy group sounds like a great in. I think you've just got to be a little bit clever about how you implement certain things to make it work. I think, you know, as we've already discussed, the only way that games are going to work in the classroom is if you've got teachers that are passionate about making them work. I think that's fairly obvious.
Great. Thanks. Cool. This table here, challenges and difficulties. Challenges and difficulties.
The second one.
Were we talking about assessment, or is that another spot? Oh, that was the assessment.
Yeah, the assessment.
We talked a fair bit about the importance of, well, this quote here says, we try to do something innovative and new, but then we assess it just the old way that we always had. So we were talking about the challenge of getting beyond that. The importance of getting beyond that notion that you have to do this task, but then you have to go and assess it in a traditional manner. And people were giving examples about how that doesn't need to be that way. So you can actually be flexible.
Okay. So how can you be flexible with assessment?
Well, you were talking about how.
Yeah, what I was saying was it doesn't have to be different to you, the way you normally. So if we gave a child or a student a board game to do, why wouldn't we assess it in the same manner if they were just doing it on in a game style? So provided they're following or ticking off the content or what's required for their assessment piece, should really be assessed in a similar way.
Sure. Okay.
By which we mean that you don't have to create a fake assessment task. So you don't do this game activity and then go and write an essay on it.
Right. Yeah.
You can actually use the skills that you've already got in assessing different types of
content, knowledge.
and apply to that to a game-based learning activity.
Great. Okay.
And everybody was really positive about just sort of matter of fact about that actually. Like, duh. Would you try and assess it in some artificial way?
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think the tension comes up when, you know, people are then saying, well, I've got to have something for a report for English, you know, or for science or history or whatever it is. And you know, how do I get that comment on through the report and that mark on the report after doing stuff with games? And I think for me that seems to be something that comes up as an issue, or you know, so it almost becomes like the gaming stuff becomes almost like an isolated activity, and it gets assessed and there's feedback and so on, but it's not counted as necessarily, you know, official marks or something.
Yeah, I think that's where your planning is really important, and the writing of your assessment task. You know, it is based heavily around your game. It's not an add-on. So if you're still assessing similar outcomes and criteria and whatever learnings from a well-planned game project, there's no different to that to giving a written assignment or a test or another assessment instrument.
Okay, cool.
You don't assess every single thing we do within the day as well. So, you know, talking about a little about assessment, I guess that's the area we're looking at. But at the same time as well, we have different methods to teach concepts, and the platform for learning can be used like that for that. And it doesn't mean we have to do up a criteria sheet and assess it necessarily.
Sure.
It can be used either way, really, can't it? And it can still be effective.
So it may be that the You know, so in your case, with your new unit that you're doing around earthquakes and so on, it may be that, you know, playing a game for a lesson or two helps contribute towards knowledge development, but it's that knowledge development that gets assessed in some other way at the end of the year. Yeah, sure.
Also, it comes into your general comments when you're talking about students too, as a teacher, you know, that all these games and the way they're responding to the games, the way they're interacting with the games, all those sorts of things, collaboration, all of that, that you can actually, you hold as a teacher, you hold that in your comments when you talk about their general attitude to school and so on.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's true. All right, we're going to quickly do the last two columns. So, a quick comment about production from this table. What did you guys come up with there? And then we'll do critical literacy on the curriculum.
That was whether or not they use the skills that have been taught in class and apply them to new situations rather than familiar regurgitation. Whether or not they tested and how it played. From my recollection, it was more, Brian, you mentioned that he was interested in having them come up with a product that they could showcase as having achieved.
Yeah, I think we're probably like a lot of classroom groups where we had a great general discussion. Basically exactly what we were supposed to be doing. But certainly the production side of things, I think, yeah, a big feedback was that, you know, the production process would be required in other areas. You know, you have a science project to produce, or you know, an English whole to work in a group or whatever. So the production process for the game didn't necessarily create any, you know, insurmountable problems. It was just a different technique. So whilst those, you know, does provide some extra challenges, that, you know, it was still a very productive, wrong word, a very, you know, very worthwhile process to go through.
Okay.
Wasn't any great challenges, or doesn't necessarily need to be challenges or difficulties involved there.
Okay. Good. All right. Critical literacy.
Just thinking back, we spent a lot of time talking about the notion of peer assessment, and that notion of self-reflection, I guess. And we've probably spent most of the time talking about Con's particular example, in that the boys got a lot out of feedback from, more importantly, those year 9s, more so from the teacher, and how that feedback can need modelling at times, particularly if you've got, like in my case, I've got a class of year 6 boys. More often than not, they can be quite harsh on themselves and on their mates. And I guess you need to put time into modelling that feedback and showing them what it looks like, how it can be considered constructive, etc. So we kind of spend most of the time talking about that, around the notion of it being authentic feedback.
Yeah. There's an interesting relationship or dynamic, I think, between students giving each other criticism and feedback on each other's work, and the broader notion of critical literacy being, you know, let's analyse a game, a commercially produced game, for instance, you know. And I think finding the connection points between those two can be really, really useful and productive. Okay, any final thoughts on that?
One other comment I'd like to make across the previous one as well, which was the challenges. I think some of the time we're so limited to term-orientated products or work. And if we have something that's ongoing and moves through a couple of terms, or we have the time to feedback and redesign instead of orientating everything to a product at the end, that we might have that openness, that ability to build in more critical, develop children's ability to be more, you know, recursive, reflective. We redesign, you know, that's the way we work. We don't have to have products at the end all the time. So if we move something through even over a number of terms, do we have that opportunity in schools these days to actually have something that we can really have that deeper time to engage with? And if we don't have that, then, you know, we're doing superficial things that we run through and orientate ourselves all the time with that. So that, I think, is a problem.
Yeah,
that sits
it's, I
below
think
this.
that's what I was trying to get towards when I was talking about that need to have something for the report, you know, or to, you know, for each term-based piece of feedback to parents or whatever, that there's that tension there between, you know, something that is ongoing, is a long project or whatever, and the need to say, okay, what did they achieve now instead of someone.
And the time, like even for the teacher, you do it once, second time you do it differently. You know, you might do it the following year as Con did twice with Scratch. You did it differently the second time. And that's great because he has the time to rethink and process that. But do we give that option to kids?
Yeah.
And games require it.
Yes. Okay, good. All right. Curriculum, social skills. Any quick comments down here?
We talked a lot about that you need to be kind of like aware of the curriculum, but don't let that drive everything, to be open. So we talked about, you know, things like, you know, that you might have the curriculum generally in your mind, but then you let the kids do the activity and then look at how that maps back onto whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And then in terms of the kids, that Lynette was talking about, is an approach of you let them play, and then you make them more aware of the kind of, or be a bit more explicit about the kind of curriculum areas that the work's addressing, and then let them play again. They get, I think, you know, the idea would be that then they're a bit more focused, or that comes out more explicitly. So.
Yeah, they know what they're looking for, and once they can identify it in the game, they can then apply it to other areas, like creative writing.
And we also made a point that there's lots of valuable learning going on, but you can't assess everything, and that you need to value the unplanned as well. And that there's also there's also an element of kind of like a whole. Then it gave the example of somebody, a kid at home who couldn't find his clothes, and then we had another look and found them again. So it's just like a game.
Yeah.
So a sort of underlying, you know, the nurturing of an underlying sort of problem-solving philosophy or approach or orientation. So the kind of life skills stuff that's been fostered through class.
Did that pull you across into this discussion here about things not considered games? That all right. So then we get into the conversation about alignment to either state-based or Australian curriculum documents, and then general capabilities. Just before we finish the session, did anyone want to add anything to that part of the conversation? So you guys were looking at the general capabilities. So what was the key kind of idea that you came up with there?
I guess looking at the comments from Victoria and then the comments from Queensland, the underlying theme was around that notion of flexibility. So realising that, yes, there is a CARA or is it OSPELS that people need to work off and according to, but you can still bring a certain amount of flexibility to your daily classroom life so that games-based play can happen and other things can happen as well. There was a comment here that, I guess this is just me speaking, was around educating the whole child. So manners, just trying to find socialising, you know, all of those things that you would hope children are learning through school and home life, but aren't necessarily part of the curriculum.
Yeah, which is the social skills,
Yeah.
things not recognised.
Yeah.
This is something that's come up quite a lot now, discussions previously around students learning all sorts of things with games that aren't assessed or aren't aligned to curriculum that is still really important for students.
Yeah.
So I guess there's that key tension, you know, that there's a push, there seems to be a push for everything to really strongly align to curriculum. Here in Queensland at least, we've got very strong messages about literacy and numeracy, you know, development in the state system at least. And, you know, sometimes some of these things, which are crucial, get pushed to the sidelines, I think. But it is an area, and I think before the project began, I don't think I put a lot of thought into this idea that bringing games into the classroom really provides this opportunity for the development of social skills and the, you know, looking at things that aren't recognised per se. So I think it's a really rich thing that we've recognised in this project, but that I don't think we've resolved in terms of, you know, where it leaves us as far as how games sit in the classroom. So this group here you guys were talking about this kind of alignment to particular curriculum.
Yeah, I think we felt that some curriculum areas explicitly have elements involved there, such as the media curriculum, which would align very nicely. But simply a matter of looking at curriculum documents and making curriculum connections, we felt it was quite possible to align your game plan to many of them. It's just a bit of planning and preparation required to make it worthwhile and to align closely with the requirements.
Okay. Right. Any other final thoughts from
That's
Mr.
true. I think it's just being creative,
Yeah.
especially in primary school teachers. We're used to trying to educate while entertaining. So
Yeah.
in that age group, entertainment on campus is a really good vehicle.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Michael, with the new digital technologies curriculum coming out, that's I think is going to make it a little bit easier for us as teachers to do a lot more gaming and be accountable because it's there. That's what we have.
Well, it's in it, yeah, and Jason and I have this conversation all the time because the digital technologies and the media arts part of the arts curriculum kind of are very complementary, and so that's there too. So both of those curriculum requirements, I think, hopefully will provide more opportunities for this sort of stuff to happen. But I suppose the curriculum, there's only so much time in the curriculum, and I know there are already principals who are saying, you've covered off on English, maths, science and history for much of the curriculum time. What's left for the arts and for digital technologies and for other areas of curriculum? So
there's so much in the technologies that will fit into all the other areas.
Yes, and that's the point we were making. They fit really well into things like the digital technologies and media, but there's no reason that you can't then look at your English curriculum or your history curriculum and put your gaming elements in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using scratch for history.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we want to wrap the session up because we're a little over time, but are there any final comments that anyone wanted to make in relation to any of this? Okay, well, thank you for that conversation. It's really, I think, added more to our understanding of how assessment for learning and development of curriculum and so on happens in schools or could happen. And it is a really important part of the project, obviously, so I felt it was necessary to have another conversation about it. But I feel as though there are some key things emerging that we can report on from this project, and that in our next phase of the project, as we start reporting out of the project, writing it up and publishing and so on, some of these things will very much come to the fore, I think. So thanks for your input. It's been wonderful. So now we're having morning tea. And so morning tea's outside in the corridor, and then we'll come back perhaps just a little after 11 for our next session.
And the gluten-free is on a separate plate for those, so no one else touches this. Okay, so tea, coffee's outside. There's some fresh fruit here if you want some. And
seems to be. Doing various activities, get some badges and points. Yeah, to see it's a separate. No, there's a set of videos, but there's also got a lot of funding, tens of millions of dollars, where they're building an artificial intelligence system into it. That's where and it's sort of hidden in there, and as they do various videos and activities related to assessment classes, they analyse it and they get badges. Because they're doing some really good stuff around the AI in terms of tracking students
just so that we can.
and then suggesting what should be progressed from probably the leaders in the world in that
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
We've got so much content.
Oh, it is.
Students still
Yeah, that's
a lot of
Yeah.
It's a conversation that's
It has. Yeah.
Yeah.
It has. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they
This comes from the data. This comes from. So I probably didn't
Yeah,
explain.
but where
that.
did you get the data?
No, this was from interviews that were done by members of the team with teachers.
Yeah.
So did you gather that together?
Oh no. One of the
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know exactly, but.
Oh, that's good. I just have to see.
Yeah, Catherine asked me if I wouldn't mind doing something with the data, or assessment stuff, and so that's the data. Yeah.
Was that the full amount of it, or was there other stuff?
I think, well, I think.
I'm okay, but now before we do
I don't
that.
actually know the exact answer to that question, but my sense of it is that.
It's just here.
No, but that's what you were given.
That's what I was given, but my sense was that
Just trying to find something.
when this is data based on 10 interviews.
Do you need advice on the menu?
4 teachers,
Or are you trying to find something
5
like
teachers.
No, just
Yeah.
wondering whether you had a bigger set that you condensed.
Oh no, I didn't do the condensing,
there
someone
it
else
is.
did this
A
condensing.
ruler base on there,
So
if you like
someone else has
seafood,
gone through
which is a soup.
and created these kind of themes or
Yeah.
categories from the
You're not into seafood,
from,
I
so
think.
someone sat and listened to every interview
That's okay.
and pulled those comments out.
It's lovely, if you like seafood, it's awesome, it'd be good for you if you've got a cold.
So I think,
yeah.
I reckon it's
It is a soup.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking in terms of the underused. I just
Yeah, that'd be good for you. Put it down there, mate, don't worry about the
I
32
think
bucks, I'll
what
approve
we
it
would
for
need to do
you.
is,
No worries.
along with that stuff, and then what we've got from today, we can probably, identify a couple of key papers. That might be written something like that. As a team, maybe.
Well, that's up about it.
You know, you just must thank me when you get that beautiful lunch in front of you today. Shit, it's not registering the laptop on the screen. And we might, if you can show one, are you cool then, Con?
So?
You cool?
Yeah, just my laptop's just.
Yeah.
He touched it and it worked.
It's my
Oh,
gift.
it's because Jason is the
And once
technical
you've done that, they go.
guru of
Said it's the
the
same thing 3
university.
times and
No,
nothing.
it was actually Roberta. She's got a dampening field. She moved
I
away.
do, seriously, I do. And if anything's going to go wrong in technology, it's when I'm around. It's like I give off some kind of magnetic field. Okay, so, actually, just have a look how the net is cooked up.
Yeah, I just.
Or do you want to put it up?
I just put them up. Like I don't have. I don't need internet connection.
Oh, okay, good.
No.
Bring it over, we'll see if it goes, but I actually
They
have to
should-
buy a new one.
It should fit.
I don't think it will, I have to buy a new one,
Oh really?
because I have the old one.
Is it mini TVI?
And,
Yeah, it should fit.
let's go.
Yeah, it should fit.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I see.
We don't forget Jason.
Oh, cool. I don't even have one.
This is
Because
a really,
teachers.
really old one. This is the new one. This is the new job. I had one in which I had a different. That's how they make their money.
Do you have an iPhone 5? That's even worse. Changing the power cable.
Yeah.
So that's now, and freeze one on the plate.
Yes.
You're next, right?
And there were a couple of.
Honestly,
Check on the list.
I haven't looked at the. I don't really care to be honest. If you go.
No, the guarantee check, that was.
So you get a catch the train. I don't have a train.
Yeah,
Oh, right. I don't have
Now-
a train down to that.
Who else do we need?
Oh, no, we'll catch the cat.
Oh, okay.
Go to get it yet?
Yeah. Because
Let's connect. Do you need sound? Because I have that.
Excuse me?
Do you need sound?
Wait, no, that's one thing, like, we struggle with Scratch.
Is there a
It's sound in it, it just sucks it up.
Okay. Well, I've left my doctor there, so that's so we're both about to go now. time I couldn't come and I sent a video.
Oh, yeah. I actually had videos of kids' reflections, but Joe never gave it to me. So, yeah.
Before you two
So
disappear.
she filmed them.
Yeah, she got the kids, she actually got them through reflective experience, and she filmed each kid. She was meant to give me a USB,
Typical university. No.
Yeah, I kept asking her, like, and she kept
So
saying,
I
yeah.
filmed my own and I gave in because I was doing it for something else.
Yeah.
So when Christy interviewed me, I filmed it and I used her interview questions and I gave her a list of other questions I wanted her to ask me for the video as well. So
Yeah.
it worked out well, but that's how I ended up with it.
You'd have to drink it first. In bed, which I wouldn't have a problem with that, but you know.
Suits me.
Yeah, so is it okay?
Yeah, it's all set. Now I
Okay.
have a question.
Yep.
I showed a video to the Melbourne mum that I made.
Yep.
I'm hoping that's shown here.
I don't think we've seen. I think I haven't seen it. We haven't shared it anyways. I think Kathy might have shown it to you, but.
Publish it, but I can play it myself.
Oh, sure, okay.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
brought that as a starter, just to show.
Okay, so are you okay for us to do your presentation?
It's a bit wide, but apart from that.
Hey, that's cool. As long as you're okay, comfortable with it. So it's just so that in case we do some content.
Yeah, sure.
So none of your stuff's been shown up, so.
Okay, just I didn't want to double up.
No.
It's an introductory video and it's designed for the Department of Education.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's
So
sort
how's
of
this supposed to go?
telling people the
I don't really know.
it's more
I always get really nervous about May because I think
They'll get it.
I'm not expected to feel very productive
So if you
in
need anything else.
March and April because that's busy. But
Yeah,
by May I feel like
I
I should
moved
be.
away, that's why.
I know what you mean.
I should have things under control.
Yeah.
But yet they do not feel under
No.
control.
Yeah, no.
Does my head in a bit every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should just learn
Yeah.
to kind of know that that's coming.
I know, but every year May's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
why haven't I finished X and Y? How much can I reasonably postpone until June?
Yeah, I know.
How about you? Being similar?
Oh yeah, just just multiple deadlines, multiple things that have to get done.
Well, I find some deadlines are more, compelling than others.
Yeah. No, it's a crunch time, really. I think the Easter break being the way it was this year, and Anzac Day being in there as well, really has kind of truncated things. So all of a sudden, on a particular day, you end up with 50 emails in your inbox because everyone suddenly realises something needs to get done.
I reckon
It's really
I
hard.
burnt
And
myself
then
out.
it's-
Whereabouts were you?
I don't know when the community break was, but ours was
No.
after
Yeah,
school holidays.
Sounds good.
Beautiful snow there.
So
Yeah.
I had to put it all the way through school.
Yeah.
Just the main three, like typical cities like Tokyo.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it didn't
I
make
did?
any
Yeah,
sense.
my husband
It's
and
really
I,
weird. Felt really unsettled.
and my daughter, we.
I had one day off on
Do you
the
like the
Thursday
cities
before
or-
Good
I
Friday.
like both.
Oh, you like both?
I just took it off
Because I love
so,
shopping.
because
Yeah, this-
Lee wanted
And I
to
love
get
the
her ears
bustle,
pierced.
I love that.
So she's turning 10, and
Yeah.
so she and her friend have been
I
planning
like
for
that
months and
too.
months and months that
But the country
they
areas
would both
are
get their
really
ears pierced. They're both
Yeah,
allowed to
because
when
every
they turn
person I've
10.
been talking about says they
And
don't like the cities.
it
It's
just
so
turned
busy,
into
and
a
I get that
saga.
impression too.
She couldn't
Yeah.
go through with
It's
it.
too busy for
So,
me.
Yeah. We
so
used to
I'd
do this a
taken
few
the
days
day off
before.
work to look
Yeah,
after
it's
the
so
other
formal.
kids.
Yeah.
The shopping is
The shopping's unreal.
And then
Even every
she
train
came home
station's
about,
a
about 1 o'clock or something,
it's
just
crazy.
distraught
crazy.
that she couldn't go through with it.
It's hard to find
And
through.
then,
Yeah,
so then there was
yeah.
all day
expensive
Good
too.
Friday
It
when
is
she was just
It's kinda sad,
beside
isn't it?
herself.
Yeah.
So then Saturday,
Interesting country, isn't it?
off they went again,
I
and she
don't
came back
go
with her ears
really
pierced, but
go skiing
she sat in
because
Price
it's
Right
not
at
serious.
Chermside with these two lovely women who sat with her for an hour, basically,
Yeah, we saw Mel
and,
Fuji
you know,
too.
got,
Oh, did you?
eventually
Yeah, yeah.
got her to do it on Saturday.
No, we couldn't because there was an
It's really
avalanche
good. I
that
actually remember it
happened.
myself.
So
And
we
I
could only
I
see
put it up
from
till I was
the,
12
one
because
of the
I was
ladies.
freaked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately
Well,
we
she'd
weren't
built it
allowed
up
to go
as such a
on
big
it.
thing for herself
Yeah,
and her
and then
friend
it turned out.
that
I honestly can't remember because it was
on the
four,
first day,
but it was like a yellow bus.
and then she
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
I did that too.
Yeah, it took like 6
So that's
months.
kind of
Yeah.
our Easter weekend, you know, was
Quite
was the
tiring.
ear piercing.
But it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
That's
Sort of
the
vaguely
I
crosses over
actually,
to the,
before
Easter-
some of the themes of Easter.
Easter 2000, yeah, exactly,
Put a
yeah.
Japanese
Easter
friend, she told me
2014
all
is the
what to do
sacrifice of the
and what not
lobes.
to do,
Yeah.
because there's certain things you don't do
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
over there.
I just
but,
felt like Easter was
and
sort
what
of,
kind of food to order and
Oh yeah.
she was, yes,
it was
that
almost
was.
irrelevant because it was so
Yeah.
late.
Some
Yeah.
of the rules are quite
Yeah.
odd
It took so long
because
to get to.
you're not
By
allowed
the
to
time
smoke
we
while
got
you
there, we
walk.
were like,
No.
But you can smoke in the restaurant.
I know.
Yeah, oh,
So
it's
that was
We've
quite
actually
odd
on
for
the
us,
Sunday
having
went
people
to-
sitting next to us making enough
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
while we try to eat. But
It's
Just
really
one of the
funny.
things, we went down to the beach and they had
you
said
can't,
that they
yeah,
had
it's
And you
against the
don't eat,
law.
they don't eat
street
while they're
Yeah, you
performance
can't
competition.
eat in the,
So there was
can't talk in the subway.
No.
Oh,
Frowned
cool.
upon.
It's very,
Watch those
because
reviews.
it
Yeah.
interrupts other people's
That was
space,
different.
you know,
That's-
it's
that
very
sounds
much
nice.
about,
Yeah, it was good.
you know, we're a whole community and we,
We had my dad's
invited teachers. And you're not
80th
supposed to sneak
birthday
in coffee.
celebration
right, 'cause
on
they
the
were
Anzac
nice.
Day
Yeah.
weekend. So for us, Easter was just
Oh,
kind of like, you know,
On the way to
on the way to another bigger event. So
Look at that export us.
yeah, that was nice that we
They're
all
very,
went.
most of them are
Yeah,
very
stand
nice.
for
Only,
it.
only one or two are a bit rude to
People
us
who
as
you
well.
know, were there who haven't seen in quite a while.
So
So
everyone's really nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I find.
We followed through
Well,
on
I did
Anzac
like
Day.
Henry.
The benefit of going to the beach on
My
a Sunday
friends were very
was
interested.
that there was all these ads,
Many white
which I didn't actually know.
And
That
yeah,
they
like
do a
other
fireworks
communities.
competition on
And they
Anzac Day, also on the beach.
Really?
So on Anzac Day, we
Some
took
of
the
those
kids
really
and some of my
remote
friends
areas.
down again, and they set the fireworks up, there's three
Well,
different
some of the old
companies
people.
yeah.
on barges out on the
Yeah,
ocean.
Oh, right.
So it's literally,
Wow.
it was amazing.
It's like a really big people.
Really, really good. I don't
Yeah,
usually bring
everyone's
kids
so
up to
tiny and skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
I
they,
was-
they're looking, because I got really big feet.
as definitely as enjoyable.
Yeah, right. Oh, wow. Never even heard
But
of
anyway,
that. Where does that happen?
on the Surfers
But
Paradise
it's, yeah,
beach, and because it's literally on the beach,
Yeah.
even though there's lots of people,
Yeah.
you could just go and sit on the
Yeah,
beach
and-
and you've got your own space.
You've got heaps
So
of
you're
room.
And
on
it's
the.
so good.
Wow.
I think so. Like I plugged it in.
Yeah.
As long as
It's
I
on
press that
Anzac
button,
Day
it should
this
pop up. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
It's on
I was
saver
really
mode.
surprised by it, and I was really impressed by it.
Yeah. That
And it
sounds
was,
great.
it was at night obviously, but the Surfers Paradise beach is like it's lit up.
Pretty lit up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from the bit of it that is beach,
Mm.
you don't have to worry about losing anything.
Mm.
Light it up, you can see everything.
Normally I
Just
park
ran around in
over at
circles
the parking
for
station and
a
then.
couple of hours, watch some fireworks. It's really
I know exactly.
Oh, the other thing is,
Yeah.
Ellie is completely obsessed now with Percy Jackson. Percy
my
Jackson.
daughter's.
As a result of your recommendation, though. So at the last PD day we had, you'd mentioned Percy Jackson, and so I went home and said, oh, apparently this stuff's
Yeah.
good, and
Yeah.
so now it's just all.
Fantastic. So how far is she into that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you to be
And
honest.
then
I think
there was
she's
a-
read 3 or 4 of them.
Get
Yeah.
a taste of it because Sophie's like distraught because she's read them all.
Yeah.
The next one doesn't come out until
So is it
October or something.
Oh, right. How many are there?
And blogging on
Very
so you
I
can
think in the first series there's
Oh.
5, and then in the next one,
Yeah.
I've read them all, but I
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 4 and 4 or 5 and 5. It might be 5 and 5.
Yeah,
Right.
It might be 4.
Okay. I think she's into the third or so, third one of the first
They're
series.
actually
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, no, Anna's been.
In a way,
She's
it's sort of weird, but I find that high
It's a
students
strong thing on
a bit easier for me
characters.
to teach. Unless it's missing.
There's a variety of character
Yeah,
types.
and this year, this year I've
Pretty
got such
problem
massive
solving,
range, yeah.
very fast paced.
I'm so exhausted.
That's so
Can't
strict.
sit down for 1
I've
minute.
learned something late. I thought I was pretty up with the kids.
Yeah.
But in the last 6 months,
Yeah.
Sophie started, not last time, but she was reading a lot of fan fiction.
Yeah,
And so she
like
just
I've got a kid.
discusses the novels with me using fan fiction language.
Right.
So she would say, so and so did this, and that's so not canon. And I'm like,
So not canon.
canon.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, I mean,
She means something that you're supposed to do within this story.
and some of them like,
Right.
it's challenging.
That's a
It's probably more
slightly
than my
different
classroom.
take on the word canon.
Canon,
is
yeah,
usually used.
yeah.
People say, oh, it's
So,
a good,
so
it's
it's
a
that
backhand.
tension between making sure that she understands how she's using it,
Yeah.
and that she knows
Yeah,
that
it's like,
it's
it's
that,
strange.
in that context.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
there's
it's
all
strange.
that.
I already got
And
one
then
kid in
there's
my
this thing
class.
they refer to.
Easily self-driving.
A couple of, and I'm going to get it exactly.
The examples are not smart. This is mechanism, or
So
chat.
Rick Morgan, who wrote the book, has shipping person.
Maybe, because
So shipping somebody now is a couple. It's promoting a
we all do
couple.
it.
That's shipping.
It's a couple.
Not everyone
Yeah,
does
so,
that.
and you've got to combine their names, so Percy and Annabeth become Percy Dad.
Is she not the one?
So, who would you ship, Mum?
Yeah, but have you ever thought about leaving schools? Or?
You ship.
Yeah.
Where does that derive from?
Surely you get an interview, right?
Well, it depends.
It's like, it's just this whole talk about
How old is she?
Alright, so you've
12.
pretty much, you
So
said
this is the fan
That's what you
fic. And I've just recently read a novel called Fangirl, which is sort of a young, well, it's more of an older young adult novel. So it's too old for such to read. But to actually help me make sense of some of the
Right, okay.
Is it a particular series?
Well, the one that she's made is, yeah, she's doing Percy Jackson. Two Runaway Collection, Very Silly with This
My daughter Ellie's just reading the first series of that after the game.
They're really good fun. They're really. There's this whole fan fiction about her around her. And every so often, and so to get my friends to read it. And a couple of months ago, she sent me. She was rereading them now. She's trying to fill in time until the next one comes out. So she sent me this.
Seen them at all.
All in capital and it's really long message saying,
I just realised that Nico D'Angelo is only 12 years old.
And James is already playing Jada, which is one of the variations on the Lego.
No, we thought it could be anywhere from 12 to 16 and blah, blah,
TV shows and stuff
Okay.
called Ninja.
Why are we so worried about that?
and she recounted all of the things that we had to do with the characters that we
I think it's scratched up. Definitely.
It's good. I mean, it's
Power Ranger videos.
yeah, kind of.
They're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, I did that.
But
So what's
I mean, it's not dreadful.
Percy Jackson.
But it's
Yeah, I think
has
this is quite
And it's young adult fiction.
I've got a double classroom.
Well, it's reading until she was
It's better than
11.
Turtles in a Half
Percy
Shell.
Jackson.
well.
I'm
They're really Ninja Turtles.
Basically, quest.
I like that smallest classroom in the schools.
There's a bunch of children in the world who have
I think they've morphed since
one god.
the original series. Yeah, I know they've been
Because of that,
watched a couple of cartoons and it's very different to I
Right.
remember them.
powers of them. And they have to go to school at King Half-Blood, I think.
Yeah, they'll keep some. It's interesting how they keep
But then they usually say
reworking stuff.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that's proven and
Sounds like a nice mix.
in fact, I was reading a whole thing around how Lego
Magic, fantasy.
So, and it's,
almost gone broke.
he's a good
Prior
writer.
to,
He writes the characters in
despite, you know, they're huge
interesting ways.
international
They're always,
sales
they're not just
and
one-dimensional
I
characters.
think this was
And they do
probably
have
in the
like I
late
said,
90s, early 2000s, they got very close to financial ruin and then started to
yeah.
license, you know,
With the movies and all the
license concepts and that really cool.
Yeah, there's no room there.
Hugely successful.
It's such a big industry
So,
now.
yeah, I noticed the computer game sort of led those off.
Yeah.
Starting to do computer games
Well, I
around
hadn't encouraged, I hadn't
Lego
encouraged
and modern popular movies.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't realise they were going.
young adults.
I saw the announcement where there's now more
Stephanie Meyer.
Lego people than there are people in the real world.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's just a very good reason.
Yes.
Well, the minifigure was part of it. So I think the minifigure is a relatively recent addition, like
Yeah.
90s, early 2000s or so.
The challenge,
All
like
of
I said,
those are
the
very
challenge
bland
is to like
minifigures.
Yeah, they
You
used
know,
to be.
previously, and once
Yeah,
they
they
start
go
to
to the-
license, they completely
So lots of action.
Yeah.
You still can't see too much action figurine-ish in such a tiny little thing.
Well,
but I guess kids do. Let them use their imagination, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Do you, Jokes, have a connector?
I think I do. I think I might have one.
Yeah, I didn't bring mine today. Sorry. If not,
courthouse like this recently.
Oh, so to do a presentation?
Yeah.
I might have that.
Yeah. No, not to charge, to do a presentation.
You got it? Yeah.
Would you just specialise in that then? Or would you be...
Actually, no, I went and did this presentation at Gowrie, who runs something like 30 or 40 kindergartens now in Queensland, and we've been doing this project around iPads with some of the kindergartens. So I went to do a presentation about that a couple of weekends ago, and the tech guy at the convention centre actually started to argue with me about whether or not an iPad was a presentation tool, because I had that connected, right? And the iPads that the kindergartens are using are the new kindergarten, and I didn't realise that, you know. So I asked the guy, you know, behind the desk, you know, if he had one. He just went from it. He was like, iPads are not a presentation device, you know, and you know, all this stuff. And so I said, well, people at my university use them to present lectures and so on. And he's like,
show you how
you know, he was.
I guess he's had some trouble.
I couldn't believe it. Anything else? He was there to support me.
Yeah.
Your first mistake.
My first mistake.
I can remember that back in the day when people were horrified and people wanted to bring it back.
A laptop. Yeah.
Oh, wow, she's really ready.
It's always,
She's so ready.
You learn to be very self-reliant.
they should be more
Take every
Someone was at the convention centre who's
Worried about
international conferences. What are they going to do at the gym? You know, someone turns up with an iPad at the gym 20 minutes. Can't use it.
they do, I've worked with them and they've supported me using
She said, I said, I'll speak with you and show me my package.
Well, that's been a breakthrough. The things like the changing of adapters. That,
We could do the selfie.
It's really awesome.
you think you're on top of it.
Yeah,
And then,
Oh, someone this guy, you
I'm
know.
not surprised, look at the numbers.
Sessions
That's
is
it.
a bike race. You know, that's what we're talking about.
So you went the logic route. It's an interesting technique.
So we're wanting to show people how to use iPads.
So I thought maybe I should.
Maybe I should be able to plug it in.
See where
What
I'm
a
going.
crazy idea.
Have I done? Is that one of my kids or something? Or is that not?
Well, that's just been cool.
Yes.
Sort of hands-on approach. It's more like a journey I've had in 2 years. I'll just let it load. Pretty slow. So my talk is about creating games with grades 3 and 4. I particularly only teach grade 3s, but the unit was run with grade 3 and 4 teachers because we planned together. Because back then, the level, I don't remember now because they've changed it, I think level 3 covered grades 3 and 4, but now level 3 is grade 3 in Victoria, and level 4 is grade 4. So we ran it together. So just talk about the school, me and the unit. So my background is in ICT, and then later I did a master's in education. So, and I've been teaching as a primary school teacher 3.5 years. I've only done it in 2 schools. So I was at Werribee Primary for 6 months, and now I'm in currently my 4th year at North Fitzroy Primary School. So North Fitzroy Primary School, it's basically an inner city school. It's a lot of students, so there's not much space. So we've got about 550-year-old students, and I think we've got a ceiling now because it's just too many students. We're a very affluent community, so middle to high income parents. A lot of our parents are like doctors and lawyers and things like that. But we also do have a small percent of disadvantaged students too, so we're not just all affluent. And ICT at our school, it's a really big thing. It's a key domain in our curriculum, and so we take our principals are very open to trying to use it in an innovative way. So the unit. So basically the unit. I created this unit, and so when I got involved with Serious Play and Deakin University, my team leader back in the time, he left our school, he said he wanted me to create it, basically because of my background in ICT, and I guess I've enjoyed playing video games too, I've grown up. And so I just created it over the holidays, and I created it in the perspective of like, how would a game developing studio create games? So that was the main idea. And it was broken up into looking at like structure, visuals, the narrative of games, and I can't remember what else, but along those lines. So we took a specific focus. And then later, when we played together as a team, all the other teachers threw in their ideas. So we opened Google Docs and we all worked on it collaboratively and changed it a bit. But there was like, at the beginning, there was a bit of resistance. So there are, even though our school is meant to be very ICT driven, there are some resistance. There is some resistance from the older teachers. So when I first said to them, okay, I'm going to try and create a unit that's going to allow kids to create an interactive game, teachers thought there's no way children can create interactive games. They're just not at that level. Like, you know, some of their ideas were like, students at universities can't even program properly. How are you going to get kids to program? And my idea was we were going to use Scratch, which is built around for children and adults alike. But I don't know if any of you have used Scratch, but it's like basically, I've got a screenshot of it. But it's basically like snapping Lego pieces together. So you might say, when I click the flag, I want sprite 1 to move 10 steps. So you click those two building blocks together, and then you might say, I want you to turn left. So you get another building block that says turn left, and you click it. So the character will walk in front 10 steps and then walk to the left. And I think the main problem was that the teachers were thinking of video games in general and like those AAA games, and I wasn't thinking anything like that. Like, I was just going to be happy if the kids could get something to move on the screen. So I was not thinking about anything like that. So now I'm just going to briefly talk about the unit that I've experienced. So I've ran it for 2 years now. My first year I ran it with 3C, and I don't have much work samples from 3C because at the end of the unit, a lot of the kids take their work home. So fortunately I don't have a lot of their samples to show you. So so at our school we run rich learning projects, not integrated projects. Our principal doesn't like that word. So our driving question was like, what defines a game? So that was what we opened up the unit with. So the kids had to explore what is a game, what does a game need to be called a game? And it wasn't just video games, any games. It's games that board games, imaginary games, and we asked them, what do you need to create a game? And then we narrowed it down to video games, and we focused on structure, design, and narrative of games. Narrative being like the story that drives the game. And what we did with that is we presented to them unique games that they might not have ever heard of before. So in that particular year, we showed them this game that was called Flower, and in the game all you're doing is basically roaming around, your petals, flower petals, and you're just roaming around making dead grass come alive. He said, is that a game? There's no objective apart from bringing the grass alive. You don't lose, you don't die. And so it was like pretty interesting to see him say yes, and others say no, you need levels, you need lives. And then with the first unit, another teacher found this other game creating website called Sploder, and we decided that we were going to allow the kids to use Scratch and Sploder to produce their own playable interactive games. And I'll talk about why that was a mistake. So what happened? So basically, the way we introduced the unit afterwards was that we told the kids, you're going to create your own game developing studios. So we wanted it to have a bit of dramatic elements to it. So kids got into groups, and they had to create a logo and give their group a name. So like some of the examples are like Dynamite Studios, A-Gamers or Gamers, and things like that. So we wanted them to have a logo, and we talked about how games are created by studios. And then each group had to not just produce the interactive game, but they had to produce a game pack too. So the whole idea was like when you go buy a game from a shop, you get it in like a box. Inside the box there's like a game manual, there's a disc, there's like other little things, goodies. So the kids had to, in their game manuals, and like I said, I could have brought some, but I kids, most of them took them home. So in their game packs, they had to have a manual, how to play the game, a game cover, because like when you buy a game, the game cover is quite important, the box art, and they did character profiles and a little graphic novel, so detailing the story before they play the Scratch game. Because with Scratch, you can build in stories, but it's quite tricky. So the whole idea was that the kids were going to write about the story of the game, include it in the game pack, and then when you play the game, it picks up from the end point of the story. And yeah, and it had to have a playable game too, all of the game pack. So to begin with, I just called it creative chaos. That's what I felt. So when we first began the unit, there was just so many arguments. Like it was just insane. I had to deal with so many different arguments, and it was all based around the direction of the games. So I let the kids choose their own groups. So they didn't want to tell them. For some reason, I thought I'd change it up. So every term I'd be like, okay, I'm going to choose your groups. This term you can choose whoever you want to be with. And that's a lesson in itself too. You know, don't always pick your mates. And yeah, so one kid wanted to go, oh, I want to create a game collecting interactive game. And another kid would be like, no, I want my game to have laser guns or something like that. So we just started fighting. And it was interesting because then like, from that, we had to learn conflict resolution skills. We had to talk about, discuss it, which I had to help them do it. But eventually, what happened, which is pretty cool, is that they started to self-organise into their own groups. So they came up to me and they said, listen, I can't work with him, I don't want to make that game, I've got this idea. And then another kid would overhear the conversation and go, hey, I've got that same idea too. And then he would leave that group and join this other kid. So in the end, they started to organise their own groups based on their similar ideas and things. It was really cool because I thought about how, you know, that's what happens in the gaming industry. You work for a gaming company, and then once that gaming company starts to lose the vision that you have as a game developer, you leave, you go to a new studio. And like, you know, I'll always be reading about that myself. So I kind of got a good kick out of that. And then, yeah, so when I had to talk about this to my school, I talked about did learning occur. So there was a lot of ICT, creating and communicating. So back in the day, this was when there was no Ausvals, so it was Vals, so ICT was broken up a bit differently. But it was also the interpersonal skills that were very important too, because they had to learn how to not only work within the team, but they had to manage their time. So it was a really open, unit. So different teachers took it in different ways. Another teacher who liked more structure, she was teaching the kids specific Scratch skills every week. So she would have a explicit lesson. This is how you make your character jump and collect coins. Well, I just said, do whatever you want. Like, want to build a game? Great. Go about it. Go learn how to do it. And then it was really good because then they had to learn how to manage their time, and they were going up and searching tutorials. Like one thing about Scratch which is great about it, it's created by MIT, and they have a really great supportive website. It's got heaps of videos, so if you basically want to learn how to do something, there's a video telling you how to do it. All you have to do is just watch the video, and then just do it. And so that was really good too. And then a lot of visual arts too. I mean, games aren't just about the graphics. You know, before you create the graphics, you got to draw and design it, and you know, concept art and all that. So they had to do that in their game packs. They had to draw their character profiles and so forth, and also. Oh yeah, and the great thing about Scratch is that it's got a built-in ability to draw your own characters. They're called sprites in Scratch. So everything you build in Scratch is a sprite. So if I want to build this in Scratch, it's a sprite. I can draw it myself. But basically, it doesn't do anything. I have to tell it what to do. And so that was that, and it was creativity because they were allowed to build anything they wanted to. It's quite interesting because before we were talking about critical literacy, and I think there was a comment saying now the kids, they're analysing the kids' games and stuff. So we didn't do anything like that. I kind of wouldn't want to do that because the kids came up with such quirky games. Like it was just them being kids and creative because they haven't grown as adults and they haven't been pushed by norms saying no, you can't have a foreign cat that collects broccoli because cats don't eat broccoli. I'm not going to analyse that and say why does your cat want broccoli. I don't really care. It's creative, it looks great, it's fun. So yeah, there's a lot of creativity. But so the problem. Before I talk about this kid, because I can't remember the order of my slides. We decided to use Sploder and Scratch. The problem with Sploder was that you didn't have to program anything. So basically, it allowed you to design the levels. So if I wanted to put like grass on the bottom of the level, I'd just drag and drop it. If I wanted a character who can shoot lasers, I could just drag and drop him. So you're designing the level, but you're not allowed to change the way the characters look, and you're not allowed to tell it to do something else. It's pre-programmed. And that was a mistake we made because I think that limited the creativeness of some groups because they weren't given freedom. It was closed, Sploder. So that's why in the following year we decided not to use Sploder anymore. But it was all, it was the first time we ever did something like this. It was all like a trial and error kind of process. And so with my class that particular year, and this is not his real name, Alistair, it's his nickname, he was a kid in my class who was very explosive, like literally, like he loved ICT, and if you'd get him to stop ICT, he'd like have a meltdown, so you couldn't, like if it's time to pack up, you've got to turn the computer off, he would just, push you away, no, I don't want to, and all that kind of thing. So he's sort of, I guess he had a reputation of being the person who would get me angry, and because he wanted to sort of do his own thing. But when we started doing this topic, this unit, it was really interesting because he was now the expert, because he knew how to do so much more than anyone else in the class and so much more than I did. So now, instead of like being the student who's causing disruptions, he was someone who now kids could go for help. But that had to be built up, because when I first told him, listen, you're better at this than me, I'm going to get you to help other students, he saw that as, oh, you're taking away my time, Colin. I want to build my game. How dare you, But then he sort of he had a chat about, why it's good to help others and all that stuff. And then he started to accept it. He started to say, hey, yeah, I've got a good skill I can lend to others. So we came up with the two words, tech support. So every time I would say to him tech support, he knew what I meant, and he got up and go help whoever. And I think he liked that idea of, I am a tech support. Like there's tech supports in our school, I'm one of those people. So that was really interesting for him. And then the end product was, we had a gaming expo in the first year. It was meant to be like E3. E3 is like a convention that gamers hold. It's like one of the biggest conventions for all video game people, enthusiasts, because basically you showcase what you're going to bring out. So we had our own like E3 gaming expo. We had, for a whole week, there was a booking schedule and classes could book in and come and play our games. But unfortunately, we didn't realise that was also a good opportunity for those classes that came into our classroom to provide feedback. So we didn't really focus much on assessment in the first year. And I guess that's because some of us thought it wasn't necessary, but that changed later in the second year as well. And the other great thing was that I was fortunate enough to have Joe and Christy from Deakin University come in and videotape the students. It would have been good if I had some of those videotapes, but I'm still waiting for the USB from Joe. So it was really interesting watching some of those videos, because it was interesting to see how honest the kids were about the conflicts that they had and how they negotiated them and what kind of things they learnt. Like, I was surprised that they learnt so much more than I thought they did when they discussed about the game making process. And even some of them, it was interesting, some of them had a dilemma between choosing Sploder and Scratch. So some of them were like, one gives me more creative control, but the other one's so much easier to work with. So that was good, because I didn't really get an opportunity to do that myself. And so some of the challenges that we had was that at the beginning the kids had a problem with seeing that games have stories in them. They didn't really see it at all. They were like, oh, how can a game have... So when they had to write their own stories, they were really just had writer's block. They didn't know what to write. And I would explain to them, even like Mario, from the old days, because some of them still knew the old Nintendo Mario. I'd be like, it was a simple story. You've got to save the princess. You get to the end of the castle, and she's in another castle. So and then they started to see it. Yeah, it's got a simple game. Yeah, simple story. So they started to see how even games that you think might not really have a story or purpose, they do. They can be very basic. So that was really interesting to see them understand that. So I talked about Sploder not really shouldn't have been used, so we didn't use it. And then Joe and Christy were talking about genders in my class. So it was, I looked at genders in the first 2 years. In the third, this year, like at the beginning, the girls didn't really want to do programming. So, you know, it's kind of a stereotype too, I guess, that more men than boys program. But then they started to enjoy it. But also, the type of games that were created were different too. So girls created a lot of collecting games, so collecting coins, eating broccoli, whereas the boys used like Sploder, and it was more about shooting action kind of games, defeating enemies. And that all changed in the second year, so I'll talk about the second year. And this is just like an example of one of the graphic novels. So this is the game about the cat. Actually, I've been doing it all wrong. The cat loves to eat burgers, but if you eat broccoli, you lose points. So the cat, yeah, and you can see down there that little illustration is actually what the game looked like. And it was a really weird story. Like this person has a cat and he wants to train the cat because he always wanted a cat who could be in a circus. So he decides to put burgers all over the place to train the cat how to go through obstacles. Really quirky story. Last year, and this is a bit more fresh in my mind because last year, we ran the same unit, so we did want to open it up and make it so that it wasn't restricted to just video games, that maybe the kids could create an imaginary game, you know, why does it have to be just about it? But we sort of got a bit of resistance from that, from leadership, saying we want to keep it digital games, so we said fine. This year, it's a scratch, but this year the difference was that we would pick the groups and it would be mixed, females and males. So last year, because they were allowed to choose their own groups, they picked the single gender really. So this year they had to be mixed, and we were going to involve more assessment through peer feedback. The difference, there was no more Alistair, so I didn't have an expert anymore, which made it hard for me because the students last year really didn't have much scratch skills. And that really made it hard for me because I realised I had to learn how to program. You know, if I'm going to teach these kids how to do Scratch, I'm going to have to learn how to program. So that year was, I guess, you know, it changed a bit. And Alistair then, I'd get Alistair to come in for an hour and negotiate with his teacher, and I'd be telling him, you know, teach me how to do it, and then I can teach my students. Because obviously from the previous year, he sort of forgot a little bit how to teach people things, so he would be doing it for them. And I'd be like, no, I don't want you to do it for them. I just want you to teach them how to do it so then they can do it on their own. So I then got him to teach me like how to create a new level, how to do that, and then I would teach my kids. So, and I also learned with my kids too. So we started so they had to learn how to program more. And and the great thing about using Scratch this time around was that the kids had to create all the visuals. They couldn't just drag a block anymore from Sploder. And the great thing about this was also I was learning how to program with kids. Sometimes I'll be sitting down there watching the video together because I don't know, and they'll be like, I don't know either. Let's try and work it out. So this is just a snapshot of Scratch. So on the left side, you've got your building blocks, and you've got motion, control, sensing, looks, and they're all for particular things that you want to do. So for control, it's to move it. Sensing, you might say if sprite 1 touches blue, broadcast game over screen. So broadcast the game over screen because he touched blue. You're not allowed to touch blue in the game. And that was and there's heaps more code. So that code there that you see is just for one sprite. So each sprite has been programmed. So these are all the sprites that the kids have created, and they've all been programmed. Basically, a sprite does nothing if you don't tell it to do something. And at the start, that was a hard idea for kids to understand. So I'll tell them, alright, so I'm standing here, I can't move because you haven't told me anything. Tell me to do something, be like step 2, go 2 steps forward, and I'll go 2 steps forward. And I'll be like, see how you told me what to do? That's what you have to do with your sprites. You've got to tell them what to do. And some of the games that they kept developed, so it was last year there was a game about a butcher and a lion, and the lion escapes from the zoo, and he breaks into the butcher's shop and he steals his best sausages. So the butcher, so the butcher's trying to get him, and he's trying to eat the sausages before the butcher gets him. This game here was really complex. It's probably one of the higher games. So this game here is like a Mario-based game, but I forgot what the name was of it. So you're that little man over there, and you've got a hammer, and you've got to collect things and you move on to other levels. And if you touch the peak, you lose. In terms of gender differences this time, I found that using boys and girls in the one group created less conflict. And the great thing was that the girls tended to do the design stuff, so they thought they could create the game pack, and then the boys would do the programming. But in the end, they would just come together, so because the girls would be so interested in what the boys were doing that they want to, and then they'd be like, so they'll come together and they'll basically be doing each other's work in a way too. So the girls would be doing programming and the boys would be doing the designing. Like for instance, with this game, the girls didn't like the last level that the boys created. And they said, we're going to create a better level than you. So then they decided they were both going to create an end level and get someone to vote which one they thought was better. So the structure of games. So the other great thing was that this year, because I got better at programming, and I started to learn how to do it better, I was able to teach my kids. We started to create extended games, so we started to include boss battles. We never did that in our first year. We started to have an opening screen and a game over screen. We never did that in our first year, just because we didn't have the time and I didn't really have the skill to do that, and I never really thought of it either. So, and that's that's an example of a boss battle. So, and then they've also used variables up there on the top left corner. So he's got 25 health, and I think you've got 100 health, or I can't remember. But yeah, so it's got variables introduced. And then you could see also that the kids started to understand the structure of games, because most games follow this kind of formula where they start off easy and then they get harder. So they sort of ease you into the game and then games get quite hard. So this is a mid-boss battle, and this is the final boss battle, so it's much bigger. And that's obviously ripping off Mario, something like Bowser or something. And then this is an example of an opening screen that the other kids never got to do. So this group was called Water Drop Studios, and you have to click on the start to get the game working. And that all had to be programmed. Once again, like you have to tell it, if I click start, I'm going to now load the next screen. So you have to tell her, it's like, you can't just do it. And a lot of kids at the start, when they said we're going to create games, they thought it was going to be really easy. They thought, oh great, we're going to create these games and it's going to be so easy. And then they worked that out, oh it's not as easy as before. And that's a game over screen, kind of simple game over screen. If you've lost your sprite, you've lost your lives. This group obviously didn't program within Scratch, so if you reach 0, you automatically lost. Obviously you can see the last one, minus 57. So, an assessment, there was more assessment this time. Like I said before, we had the year 9s come in. We actually had a grade 5-6 group of students test the games and give feedback. But like we mentioned previously, there was a problem with the grade 5-6s. Some of them didn't know how to write good feedback. So they'll get like, well, I liked your game. And one feedback, I remember one feedback, because it was like, what? It's like, it's too colourful, I don't like it, it's got colours. And then other kids would be like, oh, in level 3 you've got a glitch. And I think it would be a good idea to fix that glitch. And that was more informative, because then the kids would go back and go, oh, level 3, what have we done wrong? So, and I couldn't control that. I was the 5-6 teachers, you know, whether they told them how to create a purposeful feedback or not. And yes, they took on a lot of feedback, they made improvements to the games. We had no gaming expo this year. We ran out of time, but we thought we'd get prep classes to come in and play the games. So we got preps to come in and play the games, and then the grade 3s were like, had to teach them how to play the games and explain to them what the games were. So that was really nice getting preps in there. And the preps were obviously really impressed. And then, you know, the prep teacher was like, see, and you know, when you get to grade 3, this is what you will be able to do too. So that got them excited. And yeah, then we had the high school visit, which is kind of odd because you've got like preps coming in and my grade 3s acting as nurturing the students, and then these year 9s nurturing my grade 3s later. And that was a really good experience because, you know, these year 9s, you know, like I thought, you know, when I first observed them, you know, they're swearing in class and stuff. As soon as they walked into the room, they were so gentle and kind, saying all these nice things to the kids, and you know, so that was really really nice to watch and see. And there were photos taken, but I'm not sure where they are. Yeah. And where to from here? So we're going to run the unit again this year. have our planning at the start of each term. So we're going to look at it and we might change it a bit. I know that my team leader this year wants to introduce text-based adventures. So that might be another thing we do too. Yeah. And that's and that's I think gave us a PD on it. That's where we got the idea from. So we might do text-based also, so where the kids have to create not just an interactive game through Scratch or Sploder, but a text-based game too. So we might do that too. And so that's really it. I'll show you a quick demonstration of one of the games and how it works. I'll show you the best one because that's what teachers do. They show you the best. Actually, so this was probably last year. This was like a really I might have to close it, try again. That happens a lot. So this is, it's a bit, so this is one of the kids' game that they made. You make it full screen. So their one, if I click on the green flag, they've got it like a little intro screen, but then it quickly starts the game. So I'm this character, I can move in with arrow keys. Space makes his hammer go up and down in this first level. And they sort of explain what you have to do in the first level too, because some people were a bit confused. So basically, like you have to get the bomb, and the bomb makes that little guy explode. And if you touch this star, you get a superpower. It does absolutely nothing except change your costume. And then you can change back to your other costume. And then you go to space. Then you have to avoid the UFO. And then this is a boss battle. I have to beat him, and you can see how he changes colour as you hit him. Like I had to program that too. And then I go to the door, and then this is the sea level, and then this is the final boss. And then I just have to beat him. And that's it. They didn't get time to implement it's called congratulations in one screen. So, and that's just purely based on time. And some other games are a bit harder than others. So this game here is really challenging and very frustrating because you have to get the coins, and if you don't get the coins, you can't go inside the door. So and you can cheat because you can grab it and move it. Oh, maybe I can't. But so they've actually programmed it within the game that if you try to, so I touched the red and I've lost now a life. So this game is, and I forget why, it had a story too. All these games have a story, but you have to read it. So if I keep touching it, it's just game over. I'm not really good at that game. The interesting thing about this game was, in the end, when they went to a boss battle, they actually programmed in the character going, haha, I'm going to defeat you. And the boss said, no, you're not. And the boss just enlarges and takes up the whole screen. So that was kind of interesting because I talked to them about, well, this is the only group I got. So this is the only group I got to actually talk to this about. So I guess every group gets something different based on the students and who they are. And the unit changes every year too, based on the students I have in my class. And like I got to talk to them about how in games, some games you got cutscenes or videos that that drive the story, and then the action takes part again. And that's what they try to do. That's about it. Thanks. Any questions?
How long did this take, the unit take?
Yeah, so the unit goes, we run it in term 3, and basically it's our integrated unit, and every hour we get, like our principal expects us to have like 2 hours of which learning project time, but as we get towards the end of the term, when things get hectic, teachers give their kids, like one teacher on my team there said, for the whole day today, we're building games, go for it. And he just sat back at his desk and he just went away building, put music on, and that was it. And then when the kids came up, they were probably like, go see that kid. That's how easy it got towards the end.
No, that's right. But they need the time, don't they?
Sorry?
They need the time.
Yeah, they need the time. They need the time. Like, a kid like Alistair doesn't need the time because he's so switched on. Like, even now, like, I say hello to him in grade 5, and he's still building games at home. He's built a game in Scratch where it's got a day and night cycle now. So, you know, it goes from day to night on its own. You know, and it's like, well, how'd you do that? It's amazing. Yeah.
How did the kids respond to you when you sat down and said, well, I don't know this either, I'm going to have to learn it with you?
It was quite fine. Like, I think sometimes I tell the kids, you know, I don't have the answer to everything. You know? Like, I make mistakes. So it was quite fun. The thing was, at the end when we got it, I got such a kick out of it. It was like, yes, we got it, Con. You know, it's like you're working with, you're like a student too. Yeah, they're on the same team. And it's hard to get that balance too, because obviously you don't want them to think, oh, you know, he's my friend, and then they start misbehaving. So, oh, I did, but you know, they enjoyed making the games. Most of the kids enjoyed making the games. I don't think there was any negative experience from any student, or any girls, or any of the boys, or anyone else. So they seemed to quite, enjoy it.
Did you have the students going to Scratch Online and the Scratch community and looking at how other students have made games?
Yeah, so with some other teachers did a lot of that. So when the other teacher did more of a structured approach, did a lot of that, I told them, here it is, here's the stuff you can do on it, here's a link to how to collect things. And I said to him, as you're building your game, if you find the need to do that, go and learn it. So I didn't really, but I did also tell them, I did show them the website, you know, you can download it and open it, but not all of them understood that quite well. But some of the more advanced kids did, like Alistair, he would he would download code and manipulate it, and then there was this whole dilemma where like some teachers thought that was plagiarism. So then we had this discussion about, is it ethical to download someone else's code and change it? And, you know, I thought it was. You know.
So you were using an installed version of Scratch, so
yeah.
Students couldn't work at home?
So the first 2 years, because when I know, like when the first year, I know that the web-based Scratch wasn't that great, but from what I hear, it's gone pretty good now. It's pretty advanced, so that could be a possibility we look at this year, but it might not be. It all depends on what everyone else in the team thinks too. But also, like, I told the kids, like, because we have classroom blogs, and on the classroom blog I was putting links to videos saying this is how to do that, this is how to do that. If you want to go at home and do it on your own, you can. And I even gave them a link to how you can download the program. But a lot of the kids in our schools these days are using the web-based. And that's another thing we haven't explored yet. Publishing our work to the wider community and connecting with other Scratch users. So we've still kept it pretty school-based or Melbourne-based, you know, because the high school was from Kew. So we still haven't extended to like an online community. So that would be really good if we could do that. I reckon the kids would get more of a kick out there.
Just Mark, can you tell people what the Scratch Online community is? Because not everyone might know what it is and so on, and
so
what allows you to do it.
Yeah, so basically the online Scratch community, it's just, I guess, anyone, a group of people who want to build something with Scratch, and then they build it, and then they upload it, and you can go on the Scratch website and you can play it, you can download it and look at their code, you can leave them comments saying, hey, I really like that game, or I really like what you did there. Also, Scratch isn't just about building games, so you shouldn't just like narrow it to games. You can also build interactive stories. So I've had kids before build ads with Scratch. You can also build
I've seen animation,
animation
music clips, they had characters sing and they put music to it.
Yeah, definitely. So you can do a lot more. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the web-based version of Scratch, because the person who created Scratch, he's got a TED Talk, and TED Talk's like a place where you can watch presentations and great ideas. And he talks about how, like, I didn't realise this, but it's getting more advanced Scratch now, it's getting more features, and they're looking at the possibility of using hand gestures, like with Kinect, Xbox Kinect. Xbox Kinect is like a device that allows you to swipe the air and then the screen will swipe. So so Scratch is starting to look at that now too, which is quite interesting. So now so I think it's, I don't know if you've got access to these features yet, but I know in the presentation, this presentation where people were waving their hands or something and then interacted with the game on the screen.
There's also a Scratch Junior version in development that we released very soon, aimed more for the lower primary years.
Yeah, there's also Scratch isn't also like, that's a good point, because Scratch isn't just the only program you can use. There are so many different programs now you can use with kids. Like, we've explored some of them at Deakin. There's like one called Daisy the Dinosaur, and that's like an iPad app for like preps to 2, and it's the same idea, using blocks. They're all using the same idea that Scratch. I think Scratch came up with it first, I'm not sure. But the whole idea of like, it's like building Lego blocks. So there are now new apps and new programs that allow you to do that are catered to younger students. So essentially, what would be great for our school to do would be to build that up with those apps from prep. And when they get to grade 3, they've already got this kind of basic skills, and then they can extend it in year 3 with Scratch, because Scratch gives them more abilities.
I think one thing to note too is that Scratch was made by Massachusetts Institute of Technology as an educational tool, and so there's quite a lot of teacher materials on the website as well, like you know, guides for teachers on how to use it and so on. Yeah, there's heaps of guides, and if you want to move beyond Scratch, like at our school, some of the grade 5, 6s, because MIT's also made like an Android app maker, and they've got like units already developed for teachers to use within the classroom. So you could with 5, 6s, if you wanted to explore making apps. Some of the grade 5, 6s at our school have been looking at making apps, and you can I think you can sell them. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, if they're good at it, I'm pretty sure you can on Google Play.
Colin, just going back to, you said at the very start how they didn't understand that they couldn't move that unless they gave it. There's a great app called Alex, ALEX, which is great that direction of moving to forward, going right, and so on. That's really good because. And also in CS Unplugged, they've got some great non-computer type programming activities, and but that particular one, I use that app with our Lilies and that thing. It's an introduction to giving things instructions to move.
Yeah, I definitely would use that more. I think that's what I was like in our unit 2, not telling the kids how the sprites work and get them to realise that you have to. So maybe we could put it in our unit like this term, like exploring apps like that before we do Scratch. That would be good. So yeah, there's room for improvement. So
do you see the students using their newfound skills in programming and computer game making, using it in any of their other learning areas?
Like after the Scratch unit, like when we did some other subjects, like when we did like another rich learning project, I think it was, I can't remember what it was based around, I think it was based on history or something. Some of the kids decided that they didn't want to use, like sometimes we'd say to the kids you can create a PowerPoint video or something along those lines. Some of the kids decided they were going to build their whole end product from scratch, and they did. So instead of creating a game, they created like just an animation. So some kids did take it and started producing. Like when we had to create advertisements, some kids wanted to create like a video advertisement. Some kids wanted to just produce a poster. Other kids used Scratch to create an advertisement. So you did open the door for some other students to now use it not just for game making, but as another tool to produce a final product.
It's an excellent start for game making as well. It uses the same language as more advanced game design programs like Game Maker and Game Salad. So it uses the terms variables and it uses the terms environment. And the idea that there's cause and effect. So if you touch this is the effect, and you have to actually program that. So Scratch does really well at introducing that concept. So if they can have those skills, they should be able to apply it in the next game design.
Yeah, and you have to talk about like X and Y too, because everything in Scratch uses X and Y coordinates. So if you want to place a sprite there, like Scratch will tell you, like that's 100, negative 108 for X, 55 for Y, and those are little things that you teach kids as you're roaming around and going to each group. So it's like you'll be providing them like sort of at that time a feedback, an explanation of things. So I found that worked really well, just having them working in groups and me just going around instead of, because that was my approach, but like I said, you could do it more structured and just teach the skills before they go create. But then I found that when the more structured approach was taken, the time left over for creating their games was really not as much, not enough time, whereas they were just always building with me. and just learning the skills we needed as.
That's fabulous content, thank you so
Oh,
much.
thanks.
Right, any other questions for Connie?
It's just great, thanks for flicking.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, it's free, yeah. But anything MIT based.
Come on, who did the TED talk?
It was this guy, Phil, yeah. It was like the MIT scratch training.
There's the two main guys at MIT.
It might have been, it's like why teaching kids to code is important. That's the title of the
Michael Resnick, maybe?
Scott Osterfield.
I'm not sure, because I watched that a while ago.
There's two main guys, that guy and
Yeah,
Scott.
Michael Resnick's one of the key guys in it.
I'll be talking about one of Scott Osterfield's.
Oh, cool.
MIT's brought out a couple of those as well. So, now I wasn't sure what types of games you guys have been using with your schools, or whether you're using console or online or anything like that. So what I thought I might do is just play a video, which does probably a better job of introducing my school than I would at this stage. I had about 4 hours sleep. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Lynette Cam. Until recently I was Lynette Barr. And so if you're trying to Google me, Google Lynette Barr, because you'll find a lot more stuff. My blog is still Lynette Barr. I sort of built my name as Lynette Barr and married into sort of a game-based learning little marriage that we've got going on. Adrian Cam is well known for game-based learning as well. So don't get us mixed up, I'm the better looking one. I'm going to show you my blog today and talk a little bit about different games we've used and my experiences. The video I'll show you will detail some of the things that I've done with grade 6, but I'm now a grade 3-4 teacher for 3 days a week, and I teach ICT 2 days a week, grades prep to 6. So that's a brand new challenge for me, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. I'm in my 8th year of teaching, and I've been using games and learning since 2009. So this is my 6th year. So I started my 3rd year, so I was a bit, I guess a bit brazen when I walked into the principal's office and said, I want to use the Nintendo Wii. I'd never heard of anyone else doing it before, and he certainly had it, but he trusted me enough when I said, he said, what's it for? And I wanted to start with using Wii Sports in literacy rotation. It was a year, grade 6 health unit. We were looking at the interaction between the system and the body. And I explained how I'd be using the Wii. And he said, yes, go for it. And I've used it pretty much every week ever since. So, it certainly changed the way I teach from that day forward. And I'm a bit different to Con. I don't use games for a unit as such. I actually use games pretty much on a daily basis. It's just interwoven into whatever we're doing. So sometimes I'll use Wii Sports for medium mode and range focus in grade 6. Sometimes I use electricity if we're talking about sustainability or power sources and the impact on the environment. And I'll talk about how I sort of weave those into what I do as we go. But I thought I'd start with a video. It goes for 10 minutes 25. This is a video I made. The Department of Education, when it was the Labor government in Victoria, had a big push for innovation. And they paid my school to produce this video. And then we had the change of government. This video has never been published. It was designed to go on the department website, but it never has, and I don't know if it ever will, because the shift is now away from innovation and more towards curriculum. So you've probably not seen this before. I hope it doesn't go for too long. It is quite an interesting viewing because the kids get to talk a lot, and hopefully they get sick of hearing my voice. So I'll just play this. How's the sound? It's not just coming out of here, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to get
Is there a plug?
There's a plug.
Try this.
Yeah, that's good.
school located 70 kilometres from Melbourne in the township of Bacchus Marsh. We have approximately 150 children. We run 7 classes, and we aim to have ICT embedded into our curriculum and our teaching within 3 years. During the development of our strategic plan, we typically ask ourselves, how can we motivate students in their learning at school, and how can we use our technology with existing technology at home?
We began implementing game-based learning when we perceived a student need where students were discussing how the technologies they were using at home were so different to what they were allowed to use at school. One student in particular mentioned to me that being at home was way more fun than being at school because he got to play a lot more, and during school hours he thought that there wasn't a lot of play. So that got me thinking about all the learning that occurs through play and ways that we could bring that sort of learning into the classroom environment. Since 2009, when I dusted off my PlayStation 2 and Nintendo Wii and brought them into the classroom, we've been exploring the learning involved in using games, and we haven't looked back. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it, the difference that game-based learning is making. We use assessment to gauge their increase in understanding in numeracy and in literacy. And you can see improvements in teamwork, in collaboration and communication, and even improvements in ICT general skills as they become more confident in moving around with a computer. Parents have been really supportive of the use of game-based learning in my classroom. They've given written permission for their children to play games in class. They've allowed their children to bring their Nintendo DS's to school to use in class. They've been really pleased with how their children are really enthusiastic about coming to school and enthusiastic about the learning that they've been doing.
Game-based learning has made a significant difference to our school, and interestingly it has always been well supported not only by classroom teachers and our integration aides and the parents of the children involved in it. Our school council has definitely jumped on board and are fully supportive of the game-based learning concept and the action research that we've been involved in. When I walk into that room, I see children totally engaged and engrossed in what they're doing. I see teamwork, I see vibrant, robust conversations, I see game-based learning and the games fitting into the regular activities that we see in other rooms in literacy rotations, numeracy rotations. I see children sharing, I see smiles, I see them actively engaged in sharing ideas, comparing their learning, assisting each other. I see a room alive with action and learning and something happening, something different happening in every little nook and cranny of the classroom.
Super Scribblenauts has been brilliant because it's an absolute link to literacy. It's very, very clear because you need to use adjectives and nouns within the game. Yeah. And the more adjectives you use, or the more unusual the adjective you use, the more points you get. And the students now are asked to, just like in the game, if you're using 2 adjectives and a noun, in your writing, 2 adjectives and a noun. And they've had a better understanding of the proper terms for words, such as pronouns and things like that. And their writing, their creative writing has really improved. Lure of the Labyrinth has pre-algebra maths embedded in it. It's not a game where you get your character to respond to something, click on it, and 12 times 12 pops up on the screen and you type your answer. It is a puzzle where you are applying knowledge from a skill that's not explicit to the player. There's a game called Cafeteria. It is a problem about factors and multiples, and really relies on students to make connections between the numbers on the screen and times tables that they know.
It's a game where you have to do puzzles, but there's no instructions. You just have to click and figure out why you go wrong.
There are other problems that involve area and perimeter, ratios, adding fractions without a common denominator, and positive and negative integers. Students use graphic organisers to visualise their thinking while solving the puzzles. The focus for using PlayStation 2 and Buzz, the big quiz, and Buzz, the Australian quiz, the music quiz, there's all different ones, and the schools quiz, that was actually team building. And getting kids to cooperate, encourage each other and support each other. So you can stand back and watch them, they high five each other, they hug each other, and they pat each other on the back when they get something right. And if they don't understand what something is, one of them will run off and get a netbook and look up definitions of things, and the others will keep going and they'll share what they've learned. We use an online text adventure called Sorcerer. There are lots available and they're all online and they're all free. They are an online version of the originals, I think, from 1978. They have no images. They are only a black screen with white text. So they really rely on the audience painting a picture of what's happening by reading the description. So the game itself is very well written in that it uses descriptive writing really effectively. And to make that sort of writing explicit to the students has made a difference to their creative writing as well. We did a human body focus where the students would measure their heart rate before, during and after each of the different sports in the game and reflect on why they might be different for boxing compared to golf. We explored which muscles were being used most for which sports, which bones were being used the most for each sports, and we connected that to what would be the effect on the human body if one of the systems in the body fails to work correctly. We've been fortunate enough to form a partnership with the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association and Nintendo, and they've supported us in using game-based learning in our school by donating games for students to use in class. We've also been involved in studies into game-based learning by the DEECD and Griffith and Deakin universities into the effects of game-based learning on student learning outcomes. Over the last 4 years, we've found game-based learning to be challenging, engaging, compelling, and non-linear.
We've seen noticeable improvement in our engagement data across the school. We have seen increased attendance data and improved attendance data. We're at or above the state average in all levels. And we've also seen children thoroughly engaged in their learning. I'm certain that other schools have the capacity to introduce and embrace game-based learning. Our journey has been a creative and an exciting and a rewarding one, and I would recommend and encourage wholeheartedly that other principals, teachers and educators embrace the opportunities that lay within game-based learning.
There's learning in all of it. You just have to make it new and explicit and let the kids explore it. I haven't watched that in a while. I just want to point out, where is he? There he is. This kid here breaks my heart. He just had a rough home life and he had nothing. The school was buying him shoes and uniform and feeding him lunch. And he has the biggest smile on his face. He just loved the learning that we did. And one thing he did have, he didn't have shoes, he didn't have proper clothes or proper uniform, but he had a DS. Because that's they had at home. You know, the entertainment is very important. So that video was designed to show, I guess, parents and other teachers that game-based learning is valuable, and you can see the learning in it. So I know you guys already know that. Is there any game that popped up for people that they really want to know about? Because I'll go through them, but if people really were interested in a particular one, I can go into depth with it. So we had Super Scribblenauts, which was a literacy problem-solving game, and that's available on iPad as well as DS. We had Lure of the Labyrinth, which is the MIT one I was talking about before. That was a maths one, so if you're a grade 6 teacher, I would definitely recommend that one. We had Electricity was covered, all sorts of things. So do you want to have a specific, or do you want to just let me go? Just go.
No, I think I'd be interested to know more about the use of the DS system
The DS
as well,
system.
and whether you think it will continue to have a role to play in the classroom now that we've got iPads and all.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that DSs do that iPads don't. One is they connect to each other for gameplay. Here's one I prepared earlier. They connect to each other so that students can play the same game together or against each other. This one has a 3D camera built into it, and you can connect to other DSs and share photos. I took this to the UK when I went overseas, and I must have walked past someone in Paris who had one, and so we are now friends on the Nintendo system because of Street Pass. We just randomly must have crossed paths, and his little me turns up on my DS, and my little avatar will turn up on his DS. You can get points for travel and things like that. So the DS system is Nintendo, so it's fully licensed, but majority of children will have one that's chipped. So you can put one game console in it, and it's got hundreds of games on it. Completely illegal. They all do it. I just look the other way. I don't do it. I'm completely legal. The DS, because it's Nintendo, it's limited in the games that it can play. So you look at your Mario ones, and I use Professor Layton a lot. This is the only console that will play a Professor Layton game, so that's a really good one for literacy. There's a study in Scotland in the use of Professor Layton specifically as a narrative. The good thing about DSs, they're a lot cheaper than an iPad. They're a lot less breakable than an iPad. And you know, some of them can connect to the internet as well, some of them don't, so it depends on what parents want their kids to be able to access as well. You can get versions that don't connect to the internet. What else?
Being a librarian, they're really good because we have them in our library and they can borrow books.
Yes, we've got, have you got the classic 100 books?
Yeah, 100 classic books.
Yeah, okay. And you can get the Monster High books because it's got a stylus. I don't know if I've still got one. I do. It's got a stylus, so you literally turn the pages with the stylus. You can download books, can't you, from the Nintendo network?
I haven't done that.
So your school has their own set?
No, we don't have the actual compliance. We have the books, so they can take out to dip with them.
Yeah. Oh, they can borrow the game?
Yeah, they borrow
it.
yeah.
So our school doesn't have a set either, so we are relying on kids to bring their own. The year I had grade 5, 6, and I had 24 children. Only 2 didn't have their own. So, and I work in a low socioeconomic area where every single child in my grade has at least one unemployed parent. Where I first started this school, I taught the kids of teachers and accountants and nurses, and now I don't. Not a single parent in my grade is classed in that level. I think it's A level in Victoria for employment. So I'm working with a completely different set of kids, and they still all have a DS. But the DS is more accessible for those families than the iPad. So it depends on if your school's going to buy iPads and things like that, which mine hasn't, or if you're going to rely on the students themselves to bring something in. The DS is a lot more affordable, and majority seem to have one. I bought 2. So that year I had 2 kids that didn't have one. I said, here you go, you can borrow mine. So yeah, I think they'll stick around. I think they're accessible price-wise.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
How much are they?
This one was $2.98 when it first came out. That was a good 3 years ago.
Okay.
So they come down. That's the third generation one. So you can now get, I think, 2 newer versions than this one. This is a 3DS.
No.
You can get the DS, the DSi, the 3DS, and then you can get the 2D. They're all 2DSs. The latest one can play 3DS games as 2D.
What does DS stand for?
Digital system, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. Let me tell you.
Can I,
Yeah.
would I be correct in saying that the trade-off in price is that the games themselves can be quite expensive?
They can. So the
So-
game I've got in here is $60.
So as opposed to if you buy an iPad and then you maybe buy a $4 app or something
that's
like
it.
that.
Well,
So
that's
it's-
why they've all got that chip thing.
Yeah, so,
And those downloads.
so they're hackable.
It's all over Pirate Bay. You can find it. Not
It
that I
actually
know
stands for
anything
dual
about.
screen.
Oh, there you go.
It stands for dual screen, it's
Oh,
got 2
right.
screens.
Do you remember the old Donkey Kong games
Yeah.
that folded out? It's the same idea. Yeah, except you can
did.
interact with this screen. That's the thing you couldn't do with Donkey Kong. You had the buttons. Same buttons.
Yeah.
Same idea. So it's that old version turned into new. So I think I'll continue to use it. There's a range of games for small children as well, up to adult, which is really good. Like Make 10 is good for junior school.
They were very much marketed when they first came out, partly as an educational tool, weren't they?
They
With,
were,
you know,
brain
with all
training.
the brain training stuff and all that.
With
Yeah.
Olivia Newton-John was on that ad.
Yeah.
Delta Goodrum did a couple of ads as well. So, and they are. You've got Big Brain Academy, brain training, sight training, voice training. There's all sorts of things. What I might do is troll through my blog. And so my blog's called Playing to Learn, and it's lynettebarr.wordpress.com. If you Google Lynette Barr, I think it's one of the first ones to come up. So I might start talking about the text adventures then. This is something I've used with grade 6 in the past, and I honestly thought my grade 3/4s couldn't handle it. But one afternoon, it was pouring rain. The kids were a bit ratty. They were not settled enough to do what I had planned. So I said, right, I will give this a go. They absolutely blew me away with what they understood and what they could do. So, Zork is one of those text-based adventures that I mentioned in the game. This game originally came out in 1978. It's the first of 4. It's sort of resurfaced in mainstream population because it got a mention on The Big Bang Theory. Sheldon was playing it, and it was on last week actually though. So I'll show you what Zork 1 is. Anything on my blog that I write about, I actually link to it so you can find it. So there's some information of the history of Zork. As you can see, it goes up to 3. Scroll down. This is how text-based adventures work. It's a flash-based thing, so it's on a computer, not an iPad. You're presented with a black screen, and it just tells west of house. You're standing in an open field west of a white house with a boarded front door. There is a small mailbox here. And then there's that blinking cursor. So when I present this to students, I say, righto, what do I do? And I've got no idea. Click on this, click on that, where are the pictures? I can't see it. Well, they understood all the words on that one, so that was fine. But they really did not know what to do, so it's sort of that idea kind of you were talking about. Your sprite's not going to do anything until you tell it to. Nothing's going to happen here unless we tell it to do something. What do you want to do? Turn the light on, because they think it's black because it's dark. So I turn on the light. There is no light here. All right. And so I had to sort of coax them along with what was happening in the game and what we could possibly do. So I led them towards open the mailbox, because there's something we know is there. Let's open the mailbox. And we talked about a verb and a noun. We've got an action and something to interact with. So we talked about opening the small box reveals the leaflet. I loved this conversation that came. Why is there a leaf in the mailbox? No, it's a leaflet. What's a leaflet? You get them in the mail like junk mail. They're for ads. Yeah, they're persuasive texts you get in the letterbox. Unbelievable. I could not believe it. Anyway. can we read it? So that was actually the next step, was read the leaflet. So they started to get the idea, if you're presented with something, there must be a way to interact with it. And they got the idea of an action and a noun. And then they got the idea of, well, I'm going to type things in, and once they got that, I said, off you go and play. And they got into little groups, they got their heads together, they were trying different things. Someone screamed out, I'm dead, I'm dead. So I made him stop and share, how exactly are you dead? What happened? Explain your death to us. And so he explained his death, and I said, now what's happened? Oh, I've gone back to the start. What are you going to do? Oh, well, next time I'm not going to touch that there thing that killed me. I'm going to do this. So you can see the problem solving, and this is what we were talking about before. It's not in the curriculum, but how good is it, the problem solving that is occurring. So I detail a lot of that in my blog. Let's see. I'll try this one. I've recently had a problem. The Victorian Department of Education has blocked Xor, because you can see how dangerous it is. So I provided an alternative site that is also blocked by Victoria, but it looks like it's working here. So yes, I can see what blocks. So this is exactly the same thing. There is a small mailbox here, so we go look. You're in an open field west of the big white house. Alright, does anyone want me to... Oh, hello. Who's Addison? Does anyone want me to have a go at anything? Anyone you want me to go and do? I'm asking the same question I asked the kids. Talk to Addison. A-D-A...
Does it, if students have difficulty with spelling,
It will say, I don't understand you. So what ended up happening was kids would pair up. One child would have the game and one child would have dictionary.com. And I didn't do anything with that. They just did that themselves. So, and some kids would go for the actual dictionary, but they soon found out that this language isn't in your Oxford primary dictionary. Okay, I can't do that. I'm going to go directions. That was the other thing we learnt. So we're facing the north side of the White House. There is no door here. All the windows are barred. Anyone?
You're west of the house.
I'm now facing the north side. See? Go east. I'm behind the White House. In one corner of the house there is a window which is slightly ajar.
Feel my shoulder.
Now
Go through the window into the house.
So with this one, you've got to keep it quite simple, otherwise it really won't know. Oops.
Go through
I can't talk.
I'm in window.
So it will understand different things that have no link to what's actually happening. You can do all sorts of things. Some things it won't understand. It will understand swear words. It will just tell you not to swear. Things like that. So this game has a whole back end built in, which is expecting certain words at certain parts of the game. We don't know the aim of the game. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We don't know what this house is or what we're going to encounter. But like Con said before, this is where the box with the manual is quite important. So when you normally buy this game back 30, 40 years ago, you get the box, you get the manual, which would tell you that there is an underground land and that this house is the entrance to it. But the kids didn't know that, and they had to discover all that. So we had conversations like, oh my God, I found a troll. Or don't jump in the kitchen because you die. Which you do, we don't know why, but if you jump anywhere in the kitchen, you die. You can't save this game, so the kids are automatically reverted back to the start. Really, really fabulous stuff, and this is a lot of the language teaching came from this. With, let's see.
Did you find the kids were all persistent with it?
Absolutely, yeah. They were so engaged with it, and there was no difference between boys and girls. They were all right into it. What I found interesting was, and I guess this is what I've been fighting against, they think this only happens at school now. Because we play it at school, and what I have to explain to them is it's on the internet. You can play this at home. You can play this in Japan. You can play this wherever you are. It doesn't matter. And yeah, there's still that boxing of school and home. Even though I've brought games into school, they're still boxing it off, and I'm trying to stop that from happening. But yeah, a couple of kids did go home and play this and come back and share all their secrets, which is really good. So your teamwork and all that sort of stuff. It's absolutely fabulous.
Have you done any multi-user ones rather than single player?
No, I'm not allowed to. So anything deemed unsafe, anything where you can interact with someone that's not in our school is deemed unsafe by our school. So I'm not to do it. So that's why I haven't done Minecraft, which is a shame. So,
did you find that they separated more in competition with one another, or
yeah.
did they? Okay.
One boy in particular, he loved being the one that was sort of the furthest along. And what he would do, people would say, oh, what do you do? And he would do exactly the right thing, give them clues and not tell them exactly what he did. And he said, well, I worked it out, so you can work it out. But here's something not to do, or something along those lines, or I'll give you a hint. So he was even encouraging learning and risk-taking from the others in his grade, which was just amazing. And I just let them go. It was incredible. So a lot of creative writing stuff came from that, but I'm going to show you now.
Just to say, it's interesting that it's back in the 1980s, but the kids are still really engrossed.
Yes.
2 years ago, when we first started the Serious Play project, I had something similar with ours where I took them back to some text-based adventures that we did 20 years ago in class, and I just couldn't stop them. They had to say, well, I just wanted to show it to you, know that we had to finish that adventure.
I love introducing that game by saying it's older than I am. And they go, whoa, it's ancient. I'm like, thanks guys.
One of the comments the kids made was, it was really cool playing a game that my parents might have played or didn't play.
Well, you can make your own. You can design your own. So I've switched over from Safari to Chrome. So Chrome has apps. So when you log in, you can actually log into Chrome and you can download apps. And I've downloaded the app Quest. There it is. There's Quest. And you can download all these different ones. So I've got on my homepage for Chrome now, I've got Quest. I met the maker of Quest in London when I was over there doing research into game-based learning. And I said to him, where's my Mac version? And he said, I'm not making one. So this was his, he was keeping me happy. He said, I'll put it online and this is what he's done. So you just have to, I just logged in via Facebook. And I've created a couple of games. The Land of Fire, I don't remember, but this 3-4B text adventure, I actually based it in my school. So you can actually create rooms with players and items inside the room. There's exits and they lead on from one place to the other. There's features in the room. You've got, you can add objects and you can add rooms. So what I'll do is show you how far I've come. So this is the 3-4B text adventure. You're in a room 5 courtyard, that's our classroom at school. You are suddenly in a patch of greenery. This courtyard is lined with lush green ferns and the odd peace lily. What a lovely place to be. You can go east or west, so I'm going to go east. I don't remember what's there, so it might not work. Okay, so we've gone into our classroom. So I actually made this match the directions in our school. So, and what I did have difficulty with the desk, it's an item, and you can put an item within an item. So what I've actually done here is put a drawer in the desk, but I can't get it to be visible, so I'm not real sure. And then I put a confiscated bouncy ball in the desk drawer. So the idea of the game was you have to open the drawer and take that back and you get points for it. So this is the easy version of making a text adventure. If you teach high school, I would recommend something like Inform 7, which does the same thing, but it has a lot more of the variables that Colin was talking about with Scratch. Things relying on each other. And I found that impossible to do. But Quest is a beauty because it's free. Unfortunately, it's blocked at my school. And the other thing that I think is increasingly difficult for schools to get around, you know how so many things now you can just log in with Facebook? Or anything with that login with Facebook button on it is blocked at our school. So I tried to get a picture of the Australian flag the other day and I was blocked on that image because it had a login with Facebook. So there are ways to get around it, like I connect to my mobile phone and use the internet. And then once I've got past the login with Facebook, I go back to the school network and it's fine. So there's a little bit, I'm making myself sound really dodgy.
The kids know about that.
The kid that, yeah, I'm thinking about the kids. So yeah, this is something I'm exploring. I think my grade 3/4s could definitely do this, but I'm going to give this a run with grade 6 and get them having a go at designing a game. When we play the text adventure, you might have seen on the video, I get the kids to have a piece of paper and actually map out where they are in the land because it's described to them, and then they use a direction to go to the next space. And so I get them to draw. And so we end up drawing the entire underground land in Zork. And it also helps them to not be walking around in the dark when they die and they go back to the start. So we focus and we make it explicit that they're visualising their learning. And this is something they could do it in reverse, actually plan their land and then go and make it. So that's where I was going with it. I did get sidetracked by getting shifted from grade 6 to grade 3/4, but I'll get there. So Con, you'll probably beat me in studying it. So. All right, I've talked enough about Zork. It was just really the way that something that didn't have any graphics and really surprised the kids at the start turned into something they absolutely loved, and they begged me to let them play it. So I spoke a little bit about that on my blog. Electricity is something I've used with a sort of a science theme, because it is all about electricity and what sources of electricity you can build in this little community you've got here, and the impact it might have on the environment. So you have to name your little town. You automatically get a population of 10,000 and a bankroll of $400. You can set taxes, and you have to click on these little squares and see what you can build. So I clicked on that square there. I had the option of building a small coal plant, gas turbine, or a campground. Those are the only things I could afford. Of course, if you build a coal plant, we know there's an impact on the environment. The kids are forced to play that hand, and they can actually see the impact on the environment when their school goes down and things like that. What my grade 6s and to some extent my grade 3/4s figured out was if you raise the taxes too high, you're really going to anger everyone in your town. But also you need to have the taxes high enough to make money so that you can build new things. So they learnt very quickly that you can't keep everyone happy all the time. Whereas one of the grade 3/4s, they got devastated if they got one with a frowny face. So they really worked hard to make everyone happy, and they made no money. And they went this game gives them a little bit of information about each power source and what's good about it, what's bad about it, whether they go ahead and build it.
How did you go with pairing the kids because their reading level? Was it okay for them to engage with that at that 3/4?
Definitely grade 6. 3 and 4 had a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Especially my last year's grade 3s.
Yeah.
This year's grade 3s are a bit better. I think they'll be okay. I haven't used it yet this long. But I do have one grade 4 boy who I had last year as a grade 3, and he was end of grade 1, started grade 2 level. And what he did was interesting. He actually picked up on something that's a little bit more advanced in the game, and that's up here. This bit here is coal and gas. You can actually discover pockets of coal and gas, and you can mine for it. And then you can click on this section over here, I think. Markets, you can actually sell units of coal and gas. So even though he couldn't read all the information about the power source, he noticed the numbers with the coal and the gas. He said, what's going on here, what do I do? And I showed him the markets thing, and he looked at the graphs. It graphs it as a line graph about how much money you can sell for and buy for. And he was talking about how come it costs a lot to buy, but you don't get much when you sell it, and that sort of thing. So his inability to understand all the words he read sort of pushed him in that direction, which I found really interesting. And then he shared that knowledge with others, and he was the expert, and he felt really good about that. He wasn't good at much. And he's a bit of a maths head, he likes the numbers, so he's probably drawn towards it. So I guess, yes, there's difficulty with reading, but it does push them in different directions. Oh yes, you die by going bankrupt. Once you hit 0, that's it, you're done. You have to go back to the start. If you do finish your 150 turns, you get a grading. and I had the kids write all their scores up on the board, and we had a big competition so we could make lots of money and save the environment. That sort of thing. So that fit really well with sustainability. There is a whole bit of teacher resources, there they are. There's a whole planning section that you can access if you want to. I never did, but there's a lot of resources there. It's a New Zealand game, so their rules are pretty much the same things. So that was a game I tried with grade 6. So, Con, do you remember who's using that? Are you guys using that?
Yeah, they're going to use it for 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah, so you're building that into an actual unit, because I don't do that. And it's like this week, because we're doing this topic, we're playing this game. See what you can link this game to our topic. And then I'll just let them go. Not a unit, just a game. Alright, scrolling down. Oh, that's right. I got the kids to look at the pros and cons. This is a grade 6 activity where I got them to identify the power source, the good things about them and the bad things about them. What they initially started to do was copy what the game said about the good things and the bad things, but eventually they actually researched them. They got, they thought, oh, there's more to it than this, and they went researching and they found a whole lot of information that was not in the game at all. So I think, I've forgotten the name that you said before, gaming was a vehicle, and it just took them, gave them the idea and they jumped off and hooked other places. So that was really good. Super Scribblenauts was one I talked about before, and it's on DS, but it's also on the iPad, and I think I got mine for free. So this is it's a Warner Brothers one, so it's not exclusive to Nintendo, which is why you can get it on the iPad. This little guy, his name's Max, and you have to, in the game, whatever land he lands in, you have to figure out how to get him out of it. So in the very first level of the DS version, you're presented with 2 little animals, where are they? There they are. And you have to just try and figure out one thing they have in common and type it into the game. That's it. So they get harder and harder and harder, and there's definitely more than one way to solve each puzzle. And so each week I was getting, literacy will run for about 40 minutes, so I'd get one group on the DSs and I'd say, I want you to solve this problem as many different ways as you can. And they were coming up with 20, 30, 40 different ways to solve each problem. This one's a little bit simplistic, so one thing they have in common is they both have a long neck. But one's in water and one's not, one's alive and one's not, that sort of thing. So they were always looking for similarities, and that's in the grade 5 and 6 curriculum, similarities and differences and comparing. So we looked at a lot of Venn diagrams and grouping things. So all I did was play the level and make this. So I just chose which way I wanted them to think. And then they started making their own, which I didn't bother about, but they played the level, decided what the focus might be, and then made their own graphic organiser and tested someone else. Got someone else to complete it. And they did that on their own. They asked me, can we do that? I said, yeah, go. So again, I just got them started, and they just ran along. Fable Vision. I'll talk about that one yet.
There's a bit of a similar. I feel like there's a bit of a similarity between Scribblenauts and those old text-based games. I feel like you can see the kind of the connection between the two, because as you play Scribblenauts, you try out different kinds of words, and it either works or it doesn't. You need an axe, or you need somehow to cut down a tree. Then you've got to type in words and see which one will work, and whether an axe will drop down so that you can use it. So in a way, it's got that kind of commonality, that common history.
And I guess that's why I use them the same way.
Yeah.
The creative writing. So with Scribblenauts, if you want an axe, you wouldn't just type axe, because you won't get very many points for that. You type gigantic red flaming axe, and you'd get 50 points for that, because you've used all these adjectives and it's a really wild thing that you come up with. What I found really funny about that game is it's PG rated, so I needed to get written permission from all the parents to let their children play it. And it's only because of what you can type into it. Like you can type in vampires and stuff, and they're automatically PG rated because they're trying to eat things. But it was the fastest return of permission forms I've ever seen in my career. I got them all in 2 days, and the kid that didn't bring it back the first day cried for an hour. I said, "It's all right, mate, you can bring it tomorrow, you're not going to miss out." So, yeah, I got the support from the parents because, of course, the kids went home hysterical. "We get to do this tomorrow, you must sign this piece of paper." So, Lure of the Labyrinth was the MIT game that I was mentioning before, and this is one I highly recommend for grade 6 teachers. I did a case study for this one with the Department of Education. Again, it was meant to go on their website, but I used fonts different from their website, and so it wasn't to be published. But I published it on my blog instead. So, Lure of the Labyrinth is the pre-algebra maths game that was mentioned in the video where Archie was talking about how there's no instructions whatsoever. You just have to click and have a go. So this is the game. It's got a little narrative behind it. You're a character who is walking their dog, and your dog gets kidnapped and taken underground by monsters. And you follow it underground, and you find a factory that turns pets into pet food. And the monsters are running this underground factory, making pet food out of pets and selling it to the people above ground. And you have to go in undercover as a monster and save your pet. This is free. The only problem was I needed written permission from parents because I registered each child. But I had no trouble selling this to parents. It has an administrative tool. So you can actually log in and see the classes that you've got. There we go. So I can see all the kids and the groups they were in. And there was a message board so they could communicate with each other. And I could see all of that and, kick them off if they were saying non-conformance. I could get a class report of how the students were going with particular problems, and because I knew the maths involved in particular problems, I could teach to target that perceived weakness or extend certain children. You'll be able to see here in the next screen that I could see that one child was particularly high. So I could see puzzle attempts versus puzzle completions. You're looking at kids that were trying and getting nowhere. I pulled them up and asked them what's causing the challenge here and help them so that they had more success. I could see the kids that were really flying with it. I could see the kids that were spending way too many hours at home on the game. So you got total time played. I got parents calling up saying my child's trying to stay up all night playing this game. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, they're learning so engaging." Sorry about that. What else? Here we go, puzzle report. So this one was the particularly powerful one because each puzzle has a specific concept built into the back of it, and I could see the general success rate of the children playing. So you sort of have to know the game to understand what these are, but employee cafeteria is sort of based on factors and multiples and times tables. And so that's the first puzzle you come across, which is why we had a low success rate. But you can see as they access the harder versions of that particular puzzle, they got a higher success rate, so they're really understanding. The mixing vats, that's about fractions. So of course when we got to 0% success rate on level 3, I specifically taught the concept, which was adding fractions that don't have a common denominator. Things like that. So I'll show you the game. You can see that, it's got a fair bit built into the back of it. The game has a narrative. I won't show you the narrative, I'll show you the puzzles. And here they are. All different ones. You might be able to pick up on some of the maths. I think that one's counting patterns down the bottom there. This one's area and perimeter. That one's positive and negative integers. But I only know this because I played it. There's nothing that tells me, nothing at all. So I had to actually sit down and play the game, actually finish the game. But here's the first one that we come across, and this is the best one to show. This is what I showed the kids. I used to model it on the smart board, and then after a while I just let them play. So sometimes I would let them play the narrative version, or for a math session, I'm like, right, we're playing puzzle mode, this is the puzzle I want you to do, and I'd use that as an explicit teaching experience. So you can see there's no instructions. I'm putting my mouse on things, no instructions. So I asked my students, what do you notice? And they were noticing things like that monster walking in the background of the door, the sign that says wash your floors. And I asked them, well, where are we? And they were able to tell me, you know, they're in a canteen, they're waiting to eat. That one has a fork. The sign says wash your claws, there's a stack of plates, there's food in the background. So then I directed their attention to the numbers and said, well, what can they mean? And this is where, you know, they really had no idea. And then someone spotted the flashing green button. Well, what do you do with a flashing button? Ever. You press it. So I got them to watch what happened. This was the very first game I used online for game-based learning, and the kids didn't know what to do at all. But once you sort of taught them the idea of, you know, with a game, nothing goes wrong. Now, if I gave this to kids, they just go gung-ho. They click on everything. But there was a little bit of fear. I don't know what this is. So with the numbers, you've got to sort of figure out what they might mean and where, what I do.
Good and fun, the monster with the fork.
Monster with the fork? Any reason?
It's ready.
Okay. Notice what happened, we've made a mistake obviously, because the rock lady, she didn't, there's a lady by the way, she's been there. The kids noticed that before I did. She doesn't want it, but he does. And you also might recognise some of these characters. That's a salamander, that's a yeti. I don't know. And this one is the kraken. And that comes out in the narrative. Okay, so they do start to figure out, well, I've got to press this button and something will pop up. Oh, look, it's got a number on it. Anyone want to have a crack at this one?
54, 54, is that 8?
Let's just drag it over with the other sushi.
With the others?
No, with the other sushi.
That one?
Yeah.
I think 9's good.
Anyone?
Rock monster.
Rock monster, yeah? So we've got 3 globes. So I said to the kids, well, what will happen when we get to 0? Oh, we'll die or we will have lost. 36. So we already know that if there's already sushi on the plate, it can't go there.
Everyone's in the room scared.
Alright, we all want 3 times as much sushi as drumsticks. So that's a clue. We want 3 times as much sushi as drumsticks. So I'm, for that little purple guy, I'm looking for a 90 on a sushi arm. That's not a 90 on a sushi. So that's actually given me enough information to figure out what's missing from the kraken's plate and possibly the salamander's plate.
So if you go on one of the other plates, it doesn't go on the...
It's not going to go on this one.
No, because
it's not going to go on this
that
one.
one's the yeti.
But that number does mean something. So if we're not sure, our best bet is to have a go. Surely this thing is... Alright, I don't know why that's right, it just is. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Is that a 90? So if they want 3 times as much sushi as drumstick, then that sushi must go. So you can see the problem solving we're doing. Alright, I'll show you how to figure it out. So divide this by 3.
Or 2 times burgers.
What's 54 divided by 3? 18. So that will be an 18 drumstick. So it's not counted by 9s. What multiple could be working here, or what factor? What have they all got in common? Six. Okay, by 6 is 48. So 6 times 8 is 48. So I'm guessing this tray has a base number of 6, and these two items have a multiple of 8. If that's the case, then this number goes with a base number of 6, and multiple of 9. And if that has to be, if this has to be 3 times the size of this, then that has to be 2 times 3 space. Okay. So I'll stop there only because you're all looking at it right. But basically, you have to just problem solve what could possibly go on each tray. And eventually, it gets to the point where you can figure out the base number of each tray, and you can figure out the multiple that you're working with for each spot on the tray, and it's the same across the board. So once they've figured that out, and you can see there's no instructions, it doesn't really give you a lot of information to work with, but eventually they can figure it out. With Lure of the Labyrinth, you have a built-in teacher resource page, I guess, where you can download planners and things like that. And it has the American assessments, which really aren't all that different to our own. So this is even before you log in. So if you're interested in this game, you would go here and you'd have a look at For Educators. It gives you the whole rundown. How to use it, how to use specific parts within the game, how to teach with it. Lesson plans. Graphic organisers. Now this is the bit I did use. I downloaded all these graphic organisers so that the kids could actually visualise the thinking that I just did. So they could just write the number above. So we were working with 6 times tables with that one, weren't we? And here, this is a times 8, and a times 8, and this is a times 9, and this is a times 3. So once they can figure that out, they can figure out the rest. And so it got to the point where the kids would get a couple of items of food up and onto the trays, and then fill out the graphic organiser with all the numbers, everything that they needed. And then they go back to the game and just fill them in. So you can see, you've just experienced the learning that they become very, very, very good at. They do it every time. Now every puzzle's like that. Some are fractions, positive, negative, the integers, area and perimeter, but all of it's discovery, all of it.
So in your class, like this reminds me when I was a grade 6 teacher and did the Zumbinis. Where's the Zumbinis and where's a series of puzzles and a story. What did it look like in your classroom? So did you just use it in maths sessions, or was you focused problem solving? Was it your literacy? Was it a multi-dimensional unit, like what approach did you take?
With this particular game and in the case study that you can actually download from my blog, it was embedded in our maths. So our school runs the Maths Plus program, so I had to sort of behave myself and turn the page and do the next bit of the maths program. But sometimes what I was teaching in the maths program tied in perfectly with this, and so I would actually be a bit naughty and ditch that for the day and use this to teach the same concept anyway. So I wasn't, straying from the curriculum, I was just teaching it in a different way. Sometimes I would model like I did with you guys with the puzzle. No introduction, I'd just have the puzzle on the board, they'd come in, they'd look at it, and I'd go, right, what do I do? And then I'd get them to play. And there still wouldn't be much explicit teaching, so after they'd done the exploration, then I'd bring them back and say, what have you figured out? And if there was a misconception, I'd teach. If they'd figured it out correctly, they would teach each other. Like on the whiteboard, I would get them to do the maths, and I would just sit back and watch. At other times, I wanted the narrative to be the focus, so it could be a literacy thing. The narrative in this particular game includes characters like Persephone, the Minotaur with the big bull guy. There's all sorts, I can't even remember off the top of my head, but it's all linked to Greek mythology. And so you've got a link for older children for literacy as well as you do with the numeracy. What else? I sort of did all sorts of things. It could be free play, or I'd get the kids to work in their team, because I set them up in teams. or I'd make them work apart and only communicate via the inbuilt communication system. They played at home, there were all sorts of things. So it all depended on how well their understanding was being developed. Some of the kids just couldn't develop the understanding from a game. They just couldn't. And so I would sit with them and work with them one-on-one, but I preferred to let the kids sort of sort it themselves before I did that specific. So I actually detailed a work program in the case study. Does that help? Alright, I can see I've talked too long about that one, so I'm going to scroll down. But if you're a grade 6 teacher, please give it a go. It changed my maths teaching, it was brilliant. I'm just skipping over this. These are my reflections from the conference I went to in London. I went 2 years in a row. It's called Learning Without Frontiers. There must have been a frontier or two. They don't run this conference anymore. They didn't get the backing or the funding for it. But they had the most amazing speakers. So Ken Robinson, he came the first year I went, he was actually there. So Lord Putnam, who I've never seen a man talk for so long with his eyes closed. But just the most engaging speaker on education. He blew me away. He was amazing. Jimmy Wales, the founder of Google, he was very funny, swore a lot, but very, very, very intelligent man. That's Ray Kurzweil, who, do you know who Ray Kurzweil? There's a movie out at the moment called Transcendence, which is about the idea of uploading a consciousness to the cloud. Ray Kurzweil has predicted it. He's called it the singularity, and he's predicted it by a certain year. He's a genius. I think he invented the Kurzweil keyboard when he was like 15 or something. The musical keyboard I'm talking about. Very, very interesting man. Very well known in academic circles. So I just wrote about all the people that I saw at this incredible, amazing conference, including the maker of that Quest text adventure maker and Murray. I met those people over there. One of the CEOs of Lego, he was really cool. This is the class visit I made to London. So this is Dawn Hallibone, this lady in the pink. She has been identified as one of the world leaders in game-based learning, which is why I went to London specific, and this is why I made that comment to Catherine. I went halfway around the world to visit her classroom to see how she uses game-based learning, and she ran the unit I spoke about earlier with Nintendo Wii and Mean Median Mode and Rain, which I'd already done. So what that taught me was we're doing amazing things here in Australia. We really are, because she's a world leader and she was impressed with what we're doing. So I wrote a little bit about our visit there. Yeah, there's us. Let's show. Sorry. Oh, nearly come to the end. Pretty much anything that's on my website that looks like a resource you can click on and download. I should have a unit I did on Mario Kart. I did a creative writing unit on Mario Kart that you can actually right-click on and download. Gosh, I've written a lot. Here we go. I've written a lot more than I thought. Okay, so this is my Mario Kart writing unit. So I wrote it for level 4, which used to be grade 5 and 6 in Victoria. But now level 4 is grade 4. I sort of tried to make it a bit flexible. So I did the task, the recommended tools for using this, and the indicators that you might use, all around Mario Kart. I put it on Twitter, and I've gotten feedback from about 50 teachers saying they've done it and they've been really pleased with how it's gone. It's an example of how the game doesn't have to be the assessment. Like, you don't have to assess how they're using the game. The game is a prompt, or the game is the vehicle, and you're assessing their writing. Simple as that. You're just using the game to get them going, and that's the focus of their writing. So I was looking at different types of texts that you could get the kids to write with Mario Kart as the focus, or even the story behind Mario Kart as the focus. I'm only showing you this so you can go and have a look at it later. I won't talk about it right now. I'm just looking, I've got 2 minutes to go. Just a little bit of advice for the teachers. That was one of my early blogs. I'm like, if you want to have a go at this, do this. I got a call from a teacher in Torquay going, I did what you said and it worked really well. But then school council said no to game-based learning. So the experiences we're having in Victoria are, you know, the teachers are really keen to get this off the ground. They can see the value of it, but it is still trying to convince some of the leaders and some of the school councils. But I'm really lucky in my school where school councils offered to buy a lot of gaming consoles for use across the school. It's just none of the teachers have said, yep, I want to do that yet, so they haven't. So it depends on, we've had a few different challenges, but, you know, I've kept plodding along and I've seen outstanding results, and as you can see on the video at the school, he can see them too. But he just has to walk into the room and see them. So, I've made myself contactable by email address, on Twitter, on Lynette Cam on Twitter, and you're more than welcome to tweet me and ask me questions. I often get calls at my school asking me questions, and that's fine, you know, that's all normal at my school. So if you want to run some of these things and you just need more details, ring me up and talk to me, or, you know, better yet, fly me up, I'll probably I hope that hasn't been too rushed. I just wanted to cover a lot of different things so you can see, even though we're trying lots of different things, there's depth in all of what we do. And you don't have to use an entire unit. We've sort of just embedded it into our literacy. So we've still got teach group. There's still a worksheet which pleases, you know, a certain group of parents or a certain group of leadership. And I've got an investigation, which is, you know, they do a little bit of research into something, and then we've got the game-based learning. So it's nearly every day. And then, you know, maybe with the labyrinth things are a little bit different. But basically it's built in all the time.
So for someone starting out, what would you suggest?
Build it in like I have, because then you plan for it every time. So what I started with was the Wii. Kept using the Wii, just changed the game. Or played the same game.
So grab one thing and go with it.
Yeah. And I did start with the Wii. That even gets the kids used to the fact that, hey, there's a Wii happening. That, you know, people are playing games in this classroom. This is insane. Because every time I get a new grade, they've never done it before. So it's training them, you know, we need to get used to this. It's part of our learning. You don't watch it, it's not television for you. If you're on worksheet, that's what you do. The other thing is, because I own all the consoles, I have the power of taking them home if they become a distraction. So, yeah, start with something like the Wii and Big Brain Academy. You know, your first focus can be visualising, the second focus can be computing, because that's the way the game's broken up into ways of thinking. Get them sharing what they're doing, and then move into more taxing things.
Have you found much difference between the lower school and their use of games comparatively? Because often when I talk to teachers, I can't find anything for the lower school.
I would recommend iPads for the lower school. And there are some games, but you're right, there's not a lot. And so basically what I'm hoping to have happen in my school is we get some iPads. And I want them doing the basic creation, not necessarily game creation, but like movie creation, that sort of thing. I think grade 3 and 4 handle it beautifully, the game-based learning, but 5 and 6 is where I saw the really in-depth investigation stuff happening in game-based learning. And that's where I started, and that's where, you know, we've gone so far with it. I'm pushing with my 3-4s, I'm probably pushing a bit hard. I expect a bit too much from them, but they give it their best shot. They know what they know they're learning from it, and they're really keen to do that. But definitely 5, 6 is where I saw the really power.
Just a little step sideways, and mentioning the iPads and some, I'm kind of increasingly aware of, you know, promoting the iPad as the device, and I've had it put to me recently that Android devices can do everything that an iPad can, and Google Play is emerging as a very much a, you know, being as good as, you know, apps that are available for iPads and so on. I mean, where do you think we're at with that? Do you think Android devices can do what iPads can do?
I think they can.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a Mac head. Most definitely a Mac head.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard, I do know some Android people. Actually, one of the people in our study is very much an Android man. And what he has noticed is the Apple apps a little bit more polish and a generally higher quality. I think they've got a more strenuous filtering system on it before the apps are released, and they have a higher expectation of what they look like and what they do. But
there's been some talk about iPad Play for education. So, for instance, and I don't know much about it, that's why I'm asking, but some people are saying that iPad Play for Google Play for Education sets a situation where teachers will be able to, you'll be able to set up a network across the Android devices and use Google Play to have all the kids on the same app or whatever and interact across the, have you heard anything about any of that? Or?
Apple do it already, as far as I know. Who was it at your school that does it in the prep? Is it your school?
Yeah,
It's Beck, it is Beck, isn't it? So she can actually monitor what's happening on all the iPads.
Yes.
So she sends kids out of her grade with the iPad to do like a geocaching type thing where they've got to take photos and come back, and she can actually see what's on their screen.
Use Air Server.
Yeah.
Air Server lets you reflect.
Yeah.
All the iPads.
So she was saying she can actually put up on the smart board so the kids can see that and she can take it. So there is capability. My school would not have that capability at this stage because of the horrendous number of PCs in the school. So it's my Macness coming out again. I'm such a snob.
But it's an important question, I think, because Apple surely won't. And I've got the iPhone and I've got the iPad in my bag, but surely Apple won't continue to dominate forever, or
No, they're getting caught up something.
So I'm just.
Samsung.
I think it is an issue. This thing about choice.
And the problem is, why should we have to choose one or the other?
Yeah.
Why can't they? Why should we choose sides? So Android is definitely catching up. Samsung, Apple won't lead for much longer. They're too exclusive. It's not fair.
The one thing I like, and thank you very much for all your insights around games, is your total emphasis on your pedagogy, or how you were using the game all the time. It wasn't about the game. It was more about how you were getting your children to think and what sort of strategies you were using. That type of talk is really what teachers need to engage in, because it's the game or the app or the mechanics of the device. It's not about
It's not the phone.
No, it's about how
It's a tool, isn't it?
It's the perfect word's vehicle. I've used that before when I was spoken. They're a vehicle. It's how you get from where the kids are to where you want them to be. It's like a car. Straight up. I remember one more thing. It's a resource for you guys. So I mentioned that husband that I look much better than. He and I, when we first met, we sat down and made this. It's a wiki, and it's sort of grown legs. We haven't looked at it for quite a while, but basically it's got a list of subjects down the side or areas of interest. If you click on that, it will come up with a list of games that you can access. Of course, some of them are blocked, but it's got heaps that Adrian and I aren't the only ones that have added to this. Lots of people have come along and added games that they think fit the bill. Ray I've used a lot because it's quite. So some of them are sort of the more shallow games that I avoid using, but people have found them valuable, so they've put them on the website. Anything near the top is probably more likely to be that really in-depth learning because they went on quite good. So we've got maths, science and literacy. We've got commercial off the shelf. There's the massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Virtual worlds. The global issue games, they were very popular a couple of years ago with the Victorian government study, the innovation study, because this was seen as a serious game for serious learning, about how to solve poverty like you can. And how to solve real life problems in the gaming environment. So there was that push, away from curriculum into more real life problem solving, and then they've been pushed back the other way. But all these games are still here. What else have we got? Lots of videos that you can watch that talk about the theory behind games, like James Paul G. So I often use this. So this might help a few people. this grading with games. Hopefully you can get it to work for you. TED Talks and things like that, all to do with games. So any research into it, presentations, and then your game creation. So this this little wiki really grew, and it got to the point where yes, I started to put it together, but I've come back and pinched all the things that other people have added. So yeah, so it's a really good one. I had my kids towards this and say, pick anything from the science area for 20 minutes because you finished your work. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so it's worth having a look at and having a play. There's a lot on there. And we'll never stop talking.
I think we'll be on for hours. And can I take, we really want to start here kind of like an exchange of ideas and sharing, as I said, and I think it's fantastic. I'm so grateful to you both for coming up from Victoria. I hope you in Victoria get a chance to do some of the things that we're doing up here too, because people are also doing interesting things and exploring. Maybe we should just forget everything else and just cover, fly back and forth all the time. Anyway, but thank you both, for the preparation you put in, and also for all the organisation and travel and the rest. And I hope you get better. But thank you very much for coming. And thank you for doing it. It's so useful, and it's inspirational, and it's collegiate, and it's talking. So thank you.
Not a problem.
And it's fun. And I guess we can go have lunch, and as they always say things like this, the conversations can keep going.
Just for lunch, the entrance you came in, you go around to the front of the restaurant, and we've got a table for so take time and don't think you've got to go in the room because I can't belong to. So don't leave anything valuable in the room, but we will head downstairs.
That's going to be like branch maybe that's how you should. Maybe that is actually that might actually be
Short. It's got to be short for something. It has to be.
I don't know whether that's just our age. That everything's got to be not be a logic.
I reckon it has to be.
So my mind is going straight to courtship.
Yeah, well, that does.